which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the it's not August anymore, the September 12th, 2018 Board of Selectmen's meeting. On the agenda this evening, we have interview citizen candidates for the Town Administrator Search Committee, vote to approve citizen members for the Search Committee, vote to approve Department Manager member for the Search Committee, vote to select a Selectman representative to the Search Committee, vote to refer the recreational marijuana bylaw to the Planning Board for a hearing, and we have a vote to execute contract with the interim town administrator, and then we will adjourn. We do have a list of the candidates. We may go out of order depending, because some people can't make it exactly on time, but I do know the first two are here. So first we have Bill Haggerty. Bill, would you please come? Okay. We have your resume, and I really don't have too many questions for you, Bill, only because your resume says it all. You were original elected member of the Charter Commission that came up with the Home Rule Charter. You've been on a couple of search committees, and I worked with you on the last one, and you were chairman, and I found you to be knowledgeable and very organized. I do have a small question. What makes you unique for this search committee?
I think probably I'm unique in the sense that I come with some experience. I think that any committee needs some experience on it. I think that if you end up with a committee that really has no past experience, they're sort of treading their way through the process, and I think that it's really important to have some degree of experience. I was a school superintendent for 23 years over at Quabog Regional in Warren and West Brookfield, and obviously in that capacity I had a lot of involvement in hiring, certainly up until the Education Acts of '93, and still then was involved in search committees for principals and other administrative positions. So that, I think, contributed to my skill set as far as the last search committee was concerned. So.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
I agree with our chair on your resume for sure. I didn't have a chance to work with you on the search committee, but I was very pleased with the result. So I have a couple of questions that are a little more general in nature. How would you describe the ideal candidate for the town administrator in Sturbridge? What qualities would you say make a very good town administrator?
I think the ability to mediate and to be decisive as well. And sometimes that may seem a little bit contradictory, but I really don't think that they are. I think that a good leader has to be able to listen, and he has to take into account all aspects of a potential decision before making one. And then in some instances when he's leading and the decision's been made, sometimes it takes some mediation in order to bring other people around and get them to join the team effort.
Okay, Mike?
One each? Is that how we're going to do it? Then one?
Well, yeah, it'll go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's good.
I almost feel foolish asking you this question because
Go ahead.
because of your prior service to the town and everything. But as a member of the search committee, you will be the face of Sturbridge, and likely make the first impression to our new next town administrator. How would you portray or present Sturbridge in a good light to the candidates?
That's so easy because this is a wonderful environment in which to live and raise a family. And I think that's particularly if they have, particularly if prospective candidates have a family, you can easily sell them on not only the beauty of our community, but also and what I think is a fantastic school system, and as well as some, real unique, I think there's a real strong sense of community in Sturbridge, despite the fact that we are growing by leaps and bounds, it seems sometimes. So I would say that that's how I would approach it.
Okay. Chase?
Selectman Dowling kind of hit the big question there with what values you're looking for. But I'll follow up with
Because I get to go
That's
first.
right. I'll follow up with a shorter one.
Sure.
If you were on the search committee, would you be open to a third-party professional hiring a company to come in and assist with it as well?
Yeah, I would. First of all, I would see that as a committee decision. From my experience with the charter, I know that, the last time around, I think the Board of Selectmen was sort of challenged because I think the interim administrator you were only able to appoint them for 3 months and with an additional 3. And our last charter review committee, we took that into consideration and moved the time period from 3 months to 6 months, and then a successive 6-month term. So, it's not as much of a rush in some respects. I think that professional searches can be expensive. And I think that before you make the decision to just unilaterally go out, you should at least look at what the potential is for the committee. And then, my feeling would be to at least go through one round of searching, and then if you can't come up with a viable candidate pool, then at that point give some consideration to going outside. I think last time we actually talked about it, and we felt that given the expense to the town, that we could probably do it. It took us if I remember correctly, 2 runs through candidates. The first time because we didn't have 3 that we could present to the Board of Selectmen, and the second time we had a sufficient pool to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Priscilla?
How would you vet the candidates? And I'm not talking about references, because anybody can give you a list of references that they have handpicked. How would you vet them? If you were part of the search committee, how would you vet the candidates?
Door-to-door, no. In all seriousness, I think that today, most vetting occurs not only from references and letters of reference as well, but also I think that the internet has become a viable option. I know we used it last time around in looking for information on prospective candidates, because certainly if there's been any problems, and very frequently if there's been accolades for a candidate, it's on the internet. I mean, there's not much that isn't on the internet these days, so I think that becomes a viable option. Obviously, social media is another aspect that can be used to vet. So it's not simply like it was years ago, letters of recommendation and telephone calls.
Okay. Mary, another question?
Yep. Okay, so we hear a lot about the need to compromise in government today. I'll just leave
It's
it
not
at
just
that.
government, trust me. I think
understatement.
it's called married life too, isn't it?
In what ways would you be willing to compromise? And are there any ways where you would not be willing to compromise if you're a member of the committee?
I like to think that that's one of my strengths, is my ability to compromise when I believe that it's right, and you're not sacrificing the principle that's involved. If it's a matter of principle, I'd be the first negative vote. I was involved in a board of directors for a nonprofit group, a national nonprofit group, a number of years ago, and through some political maneuvering, we were placed into a position where we had to break up the organization. And, I felt that it was not a good move. And when they came to the final vote to send to the Secretary of State in Delaware, we went around the room, and I just couldn't do it, and I voted negatively. I was 1 vote with the other 11 that opposed the dissolution. And, to this day, in fact, I was talking with someone last week who said, "Oh, that was so heroic." And I said, "No, it wasn't heroic in the least. I knew I was going to lose. It was simply a matter of me making a statement with respect to my principle."
Mike?
Thank you.
It is important that the work of the search committee is confidential.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely no leaks are allowed. please comment on your ability to keep your mouth shut.
Okay, well, I really don't write very many opinion pieces for the New York Times. But, no, I don't, confidentiality is never an issue with me, has never been, and I certainly don't think it will be in the future. I'm not a drinker, so consequently, you're not going to find me in the bars describing the candidates that we're interviewing or anything like that. And I might not even tell my wife.
Jace?
What type of management style would you be looking for in a candidate? Would be open door policy, more structured?
Well, I think certainly I want the individual to have an open door in the sense of if department heads or citizens have a concern or a complaint, they should certainly be able to bring it to him. I'm not looking for a hands-on town administrator. I think, by virtue of the term administrator, that's what one should do. That they shouldn't be down, for example, in the town barn, giving instruction on how to put the plow on the front of the truck, or making decisions for the department heads. That's the department head's role. And he needs to have that ability to work as an administrator, and again, tactfully, which I think is of the essence.
Thank you.
Priscilla?
I'm going to follow up on my previous
Sure.
question.
Go ahead.
As a superintendent, I'm sure you're very much aware that when they do superintendent searches, one of the things they do is a site visit to the school they're coming from.
Right.
Would you be willing to encourage the search committee to do a site visit whereby you would speak to residents, to business owners, some employees, but not focusing strictly only on the employees, but to do like a community outreach wherever they come from?
Yeah, actually, it would be an interesting idea. My problem with, I was not an advocate of that as superintendent. The reason I wasn't is that I felt that it was what you might describe a dog and pony show, that it was a setup by, you went to the candidate's town, he had arranged a whole series of meetings. Obviously, you met with those who were most favorably disposed to him or her, and I don't think you had a real sense of it. Either they were, very happy with him and liked him a lot and didn't want him or her to go, or they couldn't wait to get rid of them, and so they were going to feed you whatever you needed to hear. My approach was always to bring them to the school district and ask them, when we got down to the finals, ask them to spend an entire day with us. And usually what I did would arrange sort of an open house situation in the afternoon where I'd invite parents in the community to come in and meet them. And then I would be available either through the email or otherwise if they had comments or concerns or whatever. Same with teachers. I would take them through classrooms because I thought that I got a much better impression of how they're going to fit into our environment. I'm less interested in how we're going to fit into theirs because hopefully they're going to be here for a long period of time.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have other questions?
I had one more, but
Well,
I mean,
that-
I
no,
don't.
that's
Is
fine.
that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of similar to Mike's. And I hope this doesn't happen, but how would you deal with a committee member who might be disrespectful to other members or an applicant, or ask an inappropriate question, or perhaps violate confidentiality? What would be your approach if that were to happen?
Funny, I've been dealing with that in the last couple of months. I think you don't respond aggressively and argumentatively. I think you need to, even if they become unreasonable, I think you have to maintain, you have to be the voice of reason. And I think that's the role that I've always tried to play on any committee that I've been. That someone has, you can't look at the emotional aspect of it. You have to try to focus on, the logic of it.
Okay, anyone else? Jace?
Really quick.
No, no problem, because if you notice, I didn't ask.
How important is the longevity of the candidate staying in Sturbridge to you? Because
It is. When I read, I'm trying to remember where, I was on vacation, I think, in New Hampshire, when I read about Leon's departure, and I was really disappointed because I thought that we had found a very good candidate last time around. it was a tough search in the sense that, as I said earlier, we went to a second search. And, you know, I thought we had someone who we would see, you know, here, especially in light of the fact that he lived in a neighboring community. I thought, you know, he'll be here for a good, you know, 5 or 10 years, hopefully, or, you know, until something magnificent comes along. And I didn't expect the magnificent to happen so quickly. So that, yeah, that was disappointing. Sturbridge, you know, because we're such, you know, a good community, I think we're attractive to candidates. But I think sometimes we tend to be a stepping stone for them, too. And I understand it, I don't like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, anything else, anyone? Well, thank you, Bill. Now, you don't really have to stick around.
Good, because I have grocery shopping to do. The wife gave me the
Could you
list.
do mine?
I got
But-
a list too.
I'll certainly call the candidates one way or the other, if not tonight, tomorrow morning.
Good,
Okay?
great.
Thank
So
you.
nice seeing everyone again.
Good to see you. Bill's comment about being in committees where people were having disagreements and stuff. He represents Miss New Hampshire pageant at the Miss America. So I don't know if you've been following the going on there about supposedly Miss America from this year was harassed and stuff, so. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, you all know me.
Yes, most people do, I think. Do you know Chase?
Oh, I know Chase, yeah.
Okay. And Priscilla?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, Mary?
Mike?
Okay.
I don't think there's too many people in town that I don't know at this point.
I know, I was surprised, I didn't realize you lived in town now.
You know, I lived up in West Brookfield for quite a while, and I was living in a house that was way too much, and I ended up moving in with my girlfriend down here. And now it's a little too small.
Isn't that always the way? Just don't get a dog. Okay.
We do have one.
Oh, well. Okay, Bob, my first question is, what do you perceive or know of the role of the town administrator?
Well, I have a pretty good idea because I've had to deal with town administrators over the years in a number of different towns for different reasons. I've seen some really good ones. I've seen some very, very bad ones. I think that the most important thing is having somebody who has the concept of what they need to know to keep on a straight line when they're dealing with issues that come in. And I think that's one of the hardest things for somebody who's in this job. I think your present town manager actually has done a very good job handling that. And I think that's because he has had the kind of background in order to understand what he can do and how he can talk with people and what he knows he can get done and who he has to utilize within the town in order to get things to happen in a way that's not going to be a problem with people, you know, at each other's throats because of it.
Okay, Priscilla?
Other than honesty and integrity, which are expectations, what is the most important quality or skill that you would look for in a town administrator?
Well, that's a tough question. I think probably the most important thing is somebody who is going to know how to say no, know when to say no, know how to go to a point where it's not a matter of coming back to this board on a regular basis, but sitting down and figuring out what needs to be done. And if there is an issue that has to come to the board, that it comes to the board with all the information that you're going to need to make your determination, whether that be something that's done, you know, behind the scenes, or whether that's something that's done because it comes up in front of an open meeting. But that's a process that you've got to take care of every single day. And when you come in that door, you need to know that you're going to constantly be faced with that. And I think that's a lot for somebody to do, but it's also something that if they're not trained to do it, if it's not something that they think about on a regular basis, then they're going to have a problem. And that's going to happen. I mean, I've been around this town enough to know that that will happen if you don't have somebody in this job who can handle that kind of situation.
Thank you.
Hey, Chase?
Bob, if you were put on the search committee, would you be open to a third-party professional company coming in to assist with the process?
No, Chase, that's a good question. I haven't seen that happen. I've seen a couple of towns that have used that process. I think that probably my gut feeling is that the towns that I know that have used the process, and some of them are more up in the northern part of the state, have used that kind of process because they didn't feel confident enough to make a determination on how to determine whether somebody was the proper person to come in and take over that job. And I've seen it go haywire because of that.
Can I just,
Yeah.
can I just ask him to, it's your question, but
Yeah.
to clarify. Haywire by having a search committee or by not having a search committee? I
No.
just didn't follow the
I think,
haywire part.
I think having a search committee can cause a problem.
Okay, that's what I-
Unless you have the people who are there in town who are going to know how to sit down and work this thing through properly. I think doing a search committee isn't a bad idea. It really depends on, I hate to say it, but it depends a lot on the politics and the people who are really involved in the town. You have some people who get pretty headstrong and other people who are, are calm and cool and deliberative. So it's kind of a hard thing to do, under the particular circumstances. And I mean, I understand the question, and I understand why this is something that you would want to think about in this particular situation. I've run into some towns, smaller towns than this, that didn't use a heavy-duty search process, and then they kind of regretted it afterwards. So,
Okay. Is it my turn?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As a member of the search committee, you will be the face of Sturbridge, and likely the first impression for our next town administrator. How would you present Sturbridge in a good light in the interview process?
that's interesting, especially given my background with the town of Sturbridge. I've done a lot of work for the town over, the last 15 years, mostly on land and water resource protection stuff, which has pretty much been my specialty in environmental law for the last almost 20 years, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'd be difficult. I don't know how to quite answer that, but I don't know, maybe you can say that, give me that in a different.
Well, the interview process is a two-way street.
Yeah.
Okay, the candidate is trying to sell whatever he has to the town, and the town search committee, in my opinion, should be trying to present the town in a good light and saying, we want, would like you to come here, this is why we're interviewing you. And so I'm just asking you how you would reciprocate the thing, selling Sturbridge to the candidates so that they want to come here. If we get a good candidate, he wants to come to Sturbridge, or she wants to come to Sturbridge.
You're probably not going to like this answer. I think that it's a candidate selling themselves to the town. Somebody who's going to come in here, who knows what they're doing, comes in here with the knowledge to make this office work. And I think first and foremost, that's going to be the thing that's most important. In terms of selling the town, if somebody's done their research, who's coming in here looking for a job to do this job, I think that, that person should be ready to be able to take care of that kind of issue and to look at it from that approach.
Okay.
I hope that's not
Well, I mean,
dodging the question, but I think that
your
there's a
answer is
reality
the town
there.
would sell itself. You wouldn't have to do anything.
Well, and Sturbridge has got a lot to sell itself. There's a reason
Okay.
why so many people are here in town and have stayed here and never left. But when you look at some of the towns out there, I could give you an example, but I won't tell you the town, but I was asked to come to the town for a meeting. This was last year, and I was flabbergasted at the fact that there wasn't a single person in that town who knew how to actually take care of dealing with what they had were some very, very significant issues, to the point where they had somebody who didn't even live in town, and her husband worked for the town, and she was making some of the decisions for the town when her husband worked for the town, but she didn't have anything to do with the town. And and they asked me to come in and give them some feedback, and they said, "What are you people doing? This doesn't make any sense. You've got a person who's come in here who's telling you what to do. Her husband works for the town, that's one thing, but she doesn't have any other kind of contact legally with the town other than the fact that her husband is the one working there in town." Conflict of interest, huge conflict of interest. I ended up, I hate to tell you this, but I ended up getting up and walking out, and I said, "You people need a lot more help than what I can give you at this point."
Mary?
Okay. So I think my first question between you and Priscilla, and see, when you don't go first, was pretty much answered, so I'm going to move on to my second question. We hear a lot about the need to compromise in government, and in what ways would you be willing to compromise if you were a member of the committee? And are there any ways where you would not be willing to compromise if you were a member of this committee?
Compromising in terms of,
Well, you can define it as you see fit. Within being a team player on the committee, are there ways that you would compromise? I'm not
no,
going to give you the examples, I'm looking for you.
No,
to
no,
give
I
it to me.
understand.
And are there any ways that you would say, I can't compromise on this?
I'm not sure in this particular situation, because I've certainly been in these situations a lot. I'm not sure that there's a situation where there would be the need for an intense compromise. I suspect that in this type of situation, given the type of people who are going to come in here and apply for this, I think that you're going to get some good people who are going to come in and want to take this job. So I think that the discussion that goes on may not be one so much of compromise as much as people talking about it and figuring out, logically looking at this person and saying, after we've gone through all these, this person really does look like the best person to come in and do this job. I'm not so sure that it's going to be that difficult. And probably a couple months from now, you'll all come to me and say, "Bob, you were way off the..." But I'm serious about it. I really think that in that kind of situation, it can work out that way, as long as you've got people. I just sat and talked with a few of them just now, and they're people who can compromise. They're people who know what needs to be done in situations. They're people who are used to it. I don't see this as being a situation where it's going to be necessarily a huge battle. Will I be wrong? Potentially, yeah. Wouldn't be the first time.
Like the rest of us. Okay, Bob, what is there that's unique about you that you would be bringing to a search committee?
I'm sorry, I missed the first.
What is there unique about you that you would be bringing to a search committee?
Well, I think you all know that I'm an attorney, and I've spent much of my life working with various people in various situations, getting them to come to, I hate to use the term, but come to yes, come to find a way to make things happen and to get people to feel that they're satisfied with the decision that they've made. You don't want people to walk out of here being angry. That's not going to work very well. And my experience is that in those situations, that usually ends up being a problem that comes and rears its head again down the road. So I think that it's not, it's more of a matter of just making sure that things can be put together in a way that people are going to be okay with each other to sit down and have the kind of discussion that they need to have without feeling that they need to argue with each other about how they're going to pick somebody to come in and do this job.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
It's important that the work of the search committee is confidential. Absolutely no leaks will be allowed. Please comment on your ability to keep your mouth shut.
Well, if my mother were still alive, I think that in this kind of situation, this is important to somebody who's coming in here looking for a job and wants to take on a job, and it's a job that involves a lot of people in what's now a fairly good-sized town. I don't see this as being something that gets out to other people. This is something that has to be done inside here, and even after a decision is made and there's an announcement made, I think whatever discussions go on has to stay right in here.
Okay.
I just don't see this going elsewhere ever again after you've made your decisions.
Can I just follow up on
Sure.
Mike's? I would be more concerned about confidentiality during the process, not afterwards, because after a committee presents 3 candidates to the Board of Selectmen,
And it's
all
public.
their resumes are public knowledge, but the other people aren't. I have seen, and we did have the problem during one search, where there was information leaked from the search committee. So I think Mike was referencing, how would you?
My question was more to make a point than it was to get, you know, I'm trying to make the point that during the process, it's very, very, very important that confidentiality be held, so.
Well, I think first and foremost, at least for me, in terms of, saying that I wanted to come on and be a part of this process, is that I think it's important that we get somebody who comes in who's going to do a hell of a good job. You've had some great people in this position. I think the person who's here now has done a pretty darn good job. At least from my perspective, I think he has, and I don't want to know if you all disagree with me, but I think that that's the case. I think you've had some people who've come in and done this job and did a good job, but were not the easiest people in the world to deal with. And that's between my head on this side and the other side of my head, and it's not going to go any further than that. But I think that it's important to make sure that this stays from the beginning to the end as part of this process, and it never goes beyond that process.
Okay, Jason?
What type of management style do you prefer? An open door policy, a more structured?
I'm sorry, Chase, I missed part of that.
What type of management style do you prefer? An open door policy or a structured with dealing with the town administrator?
You mean for the administrator?
Yeah.
I have 2 different views on that. I think that it's important for the town administrator to have an open door policy to a certain extent, but I think that the biggest part of that is having somebody to manage it for the town administrator, so that the town administrator does not catch him or herself completely caught up in that type of situation where they're constantly being pulled from different directions. Can somebody do it? Yeah, some people try to do it. And my experience is in that kind of situation, oftentimes they last for about 3 or 4 years, and then they've got to go because they're burnt out. And that's critical in this kind of situation.
Okay, Priscilla?
How will you vet the candidates other than references? Because we all know references are skewed. So how would you vet the candidate without considering references as your primary vetting?
Well, I think one of the things that you can do is to look around the state to other towns and what they have done and how they've handled it. And I think it's worthwhile to look at that. I used to be on one of the boards in Littleton for a number of years, and I was chairman of the Board of Assessors. And I learned very quickly that it was important to make sure that I didn't get caught up in the day-to-day operations that the board was doing, because it wasn't going to make any sense. I had a great group of people who ran the office, so when I worked with them, they were teaching me on a regular basis. It wasn't me teaching them. And I was learning on a regular basis, and in that process, I also knew what kind of information I was getting that was important, and whether or not I was getting any information that wasn't important, and so I kind of learned from that. So I guess it's a matter of making sure that somebody who comes in here is able to handle, that kind of situation, and it's key. I hate to bring politics into this, but this is happening in a number of places around the country right now where there are a lot of states that are just having a heck of a hard time running their own state offices because they just don't have the people in there who are working things the way they need to be done. Some states do a real good job of it. Some states just don't. And I'm being blunt about it, but there's a reality.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob, how familiar are you with the town charter?
Not very familiar. On occasion, I've had to go and look at it, but most of what I've done with the town, as you all know, has been doing land and water resource protection, mostly land protection. So I think for me, with regards to the town charter, if an issue comes up, it's something that I want to go and I want to look it up, I want to read it, I want to see how I'm going to feel affected by what's going on in that, so that I can sort of get a sense of what that might mean for some sort of determination that's going to come out of this office.
Well, the reason I ask the question is because the town administrator's position is described, and the duties are all described in the town charter too. So
Yeah.
if you do get on the committee, I would certainly advise you to get quite familiar with it.
I think I'd probably have to get myself a little bit back into the
The swing of things.
the swing of things, yeah.
Okay, that happens. Mary, you have a third?
Yeah, I have, yes. So I preface it by saying I'm not saying this will happen, but how would you deal with a committee member who might be disrespectful with other members or an applicant, or perhaps ask an inappropriate question or violate confidentiality in the process? How would you deal with that if it were to happen and you were a member of the committee?
I've had to deal with that a lot over the years, especially, for instance, working with the State Ethics Commission. I've had to go to the governor's office to ask somebody to be removed from their job, which was not an easy thing to do. And that person went after me with a vengeance, so it was a very unfortunate situation, but I did what I had to do. So I think I look at these situations in terms of what the reality of the situation is, what the needs are of the town in a situation, what needs to be looked at, what kind of problem it is, how it can be addressed, and trying to figure out what's the best way to address that situation. In the situation that you have here, I think it's a matter of making sure that there, it's not really a code of conduct per se, but there's just an understanding at the beginning that everybody needs to know that there's a way that we're going to go about this process, and there's a good way to do it, there's a bad way to do it. These are some of the bad ways that we've learned in the past that we don't want to see happen. These are some of the good ways that we've seen in the past that we think work well. And then I think you've got to ask that of the other people.
Okay, Mike?
My third question has been asked and answered, so I'll pass.
Okay, Chase?
How important is the longevity of a candidate to you, making sure that they stay in Sturbridge?
That seems to be a big question for a lot of towns when it comes to this job. It's a reality. And I think for part of that reason is that some people get burnt out. And it's just a reality because they've got so many people pushing and pulling, and it gets to be too much for some people. I've seen some people in this job who have done really well. And sometimes the people who do really well are the people who, excuse my French, piss off everybody else in the process because they do get the work done and they make it happen. And then there's this group of people over here who are really teed off because they just don't like the way the person in this office was doing things. And sometimes there's a reality to it. You know, as a lawyer, there've been a lot of times in my life when I have really ticked people off, and I've had to be very blunt with people about how something is being handled. And whoever's going to be sitting in that office is going to have that ability to be blunt and pick and choose the times when it's okay to be blunt and the times when it's best to, you know, kind of back off a little bit.
Okay, Priscilla?
I'm going to follow up on the question that I asked before about vetting candidates. Would you consider visiting the site that the applicants that you narrow down come from? And when I say visiting the site, I'm not looking for a pre-organized meeting, but something where your search committee goes, you go to the local diner, you talk to residents, you talk to the newspaper people, you talk to the workers, but not picked by anyone. You sort of do your homework and pick them.
I'm not sure I'm following exactly.
Okay, site visit, like the local diners, the local lunch spot, will really give you a feel for what the community feels. And like any one of us applying for anything, we will give you what we know will be in our favor. I'm looking for something that you get a pulse of the community. Are you willing to visit the site? Are you willing to go if they come from Upper New York State, for example? Are you willing to go there?
I don't have a problem with that. I think that that's a good thing to do.
Thanks.
And I don't think there's a whole lot more that I can say about that. I think you'd be remiss if you didn't.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, anything else from the board? Well, thank you, Bob. Now, you don't have to stick around while we do the others.
Thank you. I can go eat dinner.
Yeah, well, but Bill, who you met's going to go shopping. The phone number we have, is that your cell or your home? The 508-963?
5324?
Yes.
Yeah, that's my cell.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a home phone.
Oh, well,
In fact,
a lot of people.
we lost it
Don't.
about a year or so ago. We haven't figured out where it is.
So you can't call it. Because I'll probably call this evening or tomorrow morning and let you know the results.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you all.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Good luck with this.
Oh, yeah.
Thank
It's going to
you.
be an interesting but also a difficult decision to make. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what happens, because this is going to be a big change.
Well, our job is just to get a search committee. It's the search committee that's got the harder job.
Well, good luck.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Oops. Okay, I think I'm keeping the order. Okay. Okay. So last, so, I go, hi Jay. Good, how are you? Have a seat. Okay, now we're asking the same questions of all the candidates.
Okay.
Okay. Now, my first question, Jay, is what do you see the role of the town administrator as?
Can you repeat the question, please?
What do you see the role of the town administrator as?
He should be a champion of the town who takes the town to the next level. Whatever is required, identify what's required, what resources needed, fund the resources, and make sure the tasks get completed. For example, the rotary that was suggested at Super 8 and everything, that should have been, gets funded, means he should have gone to the state, asked for the grant, whatever we need to do, gets the DOT involved, and making sure the traffic issues of Route 20 should have been taken care of. So he should have identified, in my opinion, there was a traffic issue, what we need to do about the traffic issues, how we can go about it, who we need to involve, and making sure that projects come through.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
Okay, mine's related, but maybe a little more general.
Sure.
So, what qualities do you believe are critical to being an effective leader and, in general, and an effective town administrator in particular? The qualities that you would look for?
3 qualities: communication, listening, and understand the needs of the town. Those are, I think, very critical from listening, from town, residents' point of view, from direct staff point of view, from the Board of Selectmen point of view, and try to work with it and see how he can balance it. What is a rational approach to solve a critical crisis or a regular crisis, or could be anything. So listening is in my opinion, and communicating is much more important than that. What was your second part of the question?
Well, that's good. Those were the qualities of an effective leader.
Okay.
And then I said, in particular, a town administrator. But if your answer's complete, that's fine, too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mike?
As a member of the search committee, you will be the face of Sturbridge, and likely the first impression that our next town administrator has of the town. How would you present Sturbridge in a good light during the interview process?
It should be very simple. Sturbridge is a very unique town. We need to present what's the historic value of Sturbridge is, how we can showcase our properties or showcase our values, and go about instilling the values that we have for the Sturbridge. For example, Public House as an iconic building, historic building, and what we expect from that. Old Sturbridge Village. Those are the things that town administrator should know. At the same time, he also need to understand that we have congested issues of Route 20. We have tax issues on town. We have higher water issues at the town. So I don't want him to give an open checkbook that here it is, you go make sure everything's happened. But at the same time, we should have a vision what we expect out of a good leader.
I didn't ask about all the problems that we have, but usually when you're doing an interview, it's a two-way street, and you want the people that are interviewing for representing the town want to put the town in a good light, and of course the applicants, the candidates, want to put themselves in a good light. So
It's the transparency. If we don't tell them what issues we have, then we cannot expect him to come in and says, you know what? Tell me now issues. Also, interview process probably will be more than one interview. There will be a subsequent interview. So I'm not saying that in the first meeting we need to tell that, but as a final candidate that we select, he or she should know what are our critical issues of town. Very simple stuff. Transparency, we have taxes issue, we have water bill issues, we have road issues, we have traffic issues, because people in the annual meeting bombarded with those issues. So if we are not transparent about those issues, I think we are not looking for a good quality leader.
I agree with you that, and you brought up a good point, that we have to be transparent about everything about the town. Thank you.
Jay, if you were put on the search committee, would you be open to a third-party professional, like a headhunter, that would bring candidates to you?
It's an interesting concept. Would I be? I want whatever means available to get the best candidate for the town. Should we try with routine advertisement and get the candidates that we want? And if we cannot find anything, should we go to the headhunters? Absolutely. We need this is a very critical position of the town. These persons represent us when we are not there, 24 hours, 7 days a week, even though the job is only 5 days. But what Sturbridge is, the first persons to get from politician, for that somebody coming new from business community or a resident, this is the person who has to handle every single issue, whether it's a bus didn't show up or there was a snow emergency. He's the person who needs to answer to the question. So I want a best possible candidate to come in and do the job as we plan and as we expect.
Thank you.
Priscilla?
Jay, I'd like to know how your background, what is in your background that makes you best suited for the search committee?
It's a very interesting question. I have a dual background. Before I become a businessman, I was a senior VP for a manufacturing company in Connecticut, where I oversee 40,000 union, non-union employees, and they work for me directly. I was second in charge for aerospace manufacturing. And then, I have, for family reason, my father-in-law was sick, and then I had to decide not to move. With company was moving to Arizona, and I decided not to go, and I become a businessman. And so I have dual background. I have hired a lot of upper management, senior directors, senior managers, union negotiations and everything. I have done that. So I have experience on that side of hiring people for that particular field. Also, I am a local businessman. My building is my signature. I have done a lot of things in town. I have a lot more frustrations that we have overcome. So I think I represent what town wants in general, and I think I would be a valuable addition to the town because of my both dual background. I definitely can bring a lot more on a search committee with my background. Also, I have masters in engineering, so I can bring some of the challenging on the traffic issues, the DPW's issues, the water, wastewater treatment plants, and all other issues. I think I can bring a lot more to the town for that matter.
Thank you.
Okay, Priscilla kind of took my uniqueness of each candidate question. How familiar are you with the charter, Jay?
I am somewhat familiar. I'm not going to say I'm 100% familiar, but if I'm get selected for the search committee, I'll read every single thing of the charter. I have not read completely, so I'm not going to tell you that I know everything a lot.
Because in that, the town administrator's job description and duties is all listed, so.
Well, definitely, if I will be selected, I'll be reading on it, and I'll be more prepared to answer the questions.
Okay. Okay, now jump back to Priscilla again, because we.
Oh, okay. Other than references of people, how would you vet the candidate for town administrator?
Well, it's a very simple process. If we selected a candidate from town A, we should go into that town and see what is his response. Maybe go to the local businesses and ask how the leaders, is he pro taxes, he's pro this, he's pro school, he's better education, or not. Second thing, go back and look at the school system rating of that particular town. So if I'm selecting, and I'm making this answer from town A, how the school system's rated, how budget of that town is. There are more than ways you can vet. Just calling a reference is probably the easiest way to get that. But if we go in and detail that, for example, if town has a budget crisis, we will know about it. If town school system's not working properly, we will know about it. Superintendent, or if the town has a employee union relationship issues, I think there are ways we can go about it, and we can find about a particular town and particular candidate, and we have to put some efforts in it. It won't be as easy as 1, 2, and 3, but I think we can get to it, and we can get a lot more details about any candidates.
Thank you.
Okay, Chase?
Jay, what type of management style do you prefer? Do you like an open door policy, a structured management? Talk to me about that.
Well, it's up to the town. Transparency is what I like. I don't want to have any hidden agenda. If I come and ask the question, answers will be the same if somebody else who comes from a local one family asks the same question. Issue is not open door or not open door. The issue is transparency. Issue is that one policy for everybody, whether it's a strong businessman, whether it's no favoritism, lack of better word. I personally think that town administrators should be very open to his direct staff, his union members, his non-union members, his residents of the town, and more importantly, Board of Selectmen. They should trust him 100%.
Mike?
It's important that the work of the search committee is confidential. Absolutely no leaks allowed. Please comment on your ability to keep your mouth shut until the final candidates are submitted to the Board of Selectmen.
It's a given. It's a fundamental requirement of any position. If you are doing a confidential work, there should no leaks. You can see my resume. You can see, my track record in town. I haven't leaked anything. When Mr. Blanchard works with me on Burgess School Committee, and he asked me about the swapping of the land, nobody knew the swapping of the land until it was done. Mm-hmm. My track record is my history, and you can count on that. If that's the fundamental requirement, I'm in. I don't have to worry about that.
Thank you.
Mary?
Okay. So we hear a lot about the need to compromise in government today. In what ways would you be willing to compromise, and in what ways, if any, would you not be willing to compromise as a member of the search committee? And I'm talking about vis-a-vis the other search committee members in the process.
The compromise is very simple. If there are two candidates and they're both equal, okay, and one has a lot more educational background over somebody else, or someone else has a lot more experience or not, and if the search committee feels that, okay, this is only between 19 and 20, which one is? I think that's very simple process. We can decide it on a majority basis that who is the best for the town. That will be my answer. The second question is about always integrity, transparency, and ethical issues. If somebody goes non-ethical, then I have an issue with it. But as long as it's a fair process and everybody has a say into it, I'm open to listen to anything as long as there is a merit to the equations. If there is, no merit, then I'll say bluntly that, what, I agree to disagree.
Thank you.
Okay, now I don't really have a third question because Priscilla asked you about your unique qualities that you would bring. And could you reiterate, though, what you think is unique about you?
Well, I'm very honest. I always says what I had in my heart. I don't have a two-faced on any given issues, and I speak my mind. I personally think that I want to join this search committee because I want to bring the best possible candidate for this town. And I want to make sure the town master plan, having the walkway, the candidates that I want in town administrators is a very aggressive getting the grants money in this town. We have a lot of studies that's getting dusted in this town. I want those studies to come out and get implemented. For example, Route 20 beautification. It's a great project. We have done a lot of study, biking road and line and walkway and all that. It's study. We have never applied for one single grant. that I know of. And I may be wrong, but I'm just saying, we as a town needs to have an aggressive candidate that go to the State House and says, you know what, these are my 6 projects, give me money for at least 2. That's the candidates I want. And at the same time, make sure everybody respect that candidate. He's very honest, or he or she, I shouldn't say he. The candidates should be honest, integrity, and straightforwardness. I want an openness where there is no hidden agenda by anybody. That's my requirement, you know. And honestly, I want to use my experience, use my education, use my business background to bring the right candidate for the town.
Okay, Priscilla?
Actually, my other question you already answered, because my question was, would you be willing to visit the site? And you answered that when I asked you about vetting the candidate.
Okay.
So I'm good with that. Thank you.
Jay,
Dan, Jason?
how important is the longevity of a candidate to the town of Sturbridge, that they stick around here?
It's a very interesting question. Longevity is very important to me. Every time when somebody is only living in 2.5 years, that means either our process was fault or he was never happy. He only used us to step to the next town, which is the higher job. We want to make sure we bring the candidate that willing to stay here for at least 5, 7, 8 years and give us the best out of him or he or she, and understand Sturbridge is a beautiful town. This is the best community to stay and work around. I personally think Sturbridge has a lot to offer to anybody who wants to take that position and understand our requirement.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike?
My third question was asked and answered, so I'll pass.
Okay, Mary?
Not saying this would happen. I started that with the other candidates too, just. How would you deal with a committee member who might be disrespectful to another member or an applicant, or perhaps ask an inappropriate question, or violate confidentiality in the process? How would you personally deal with that type of colleague?
First, I'll go to the chair and I ask the chair first of all, before even we go there, I think that once the committee is formed, we should have a requirement. This is how we're gonna behave. We should have a limit. You cannot cross this limit. You cannot go outside the bounds should be staying within in bounds. So when there is a difference of opinion, then the chair, I'll go to the chair and says, you know what? This question is not a human resources questions, because questions needed to be vetted. If somebody asking a questions that's what kind of sexual preference you are, I think we all know, and I'm making this one, Mary, so you understand. It's very honestly, I can answer question. Well, that's an out upper bound. You know, the EEOC requires you won't ask those questions. So if that kind of question's been asked, then I think it's the chair responsibility to stop that behavior right away without even getting a dispute. And if there is a dispute, I think it need to have resolved with listening and communications between the members before it becomes a real issues and real ego problem. I think it needs to be dealt with the chair and the rest of the member. We should have an open communications amongst the search committee that there should not be anything. Every member of the search committee should have one single mission: get the best town administrator for town of Sturbridge. There is no other agendas. If the person does not have that quality, I believe they should not be on that committee.
Okay, does anyone else have anything else? Okay, thank you, Jay. Now, we have your phone,
Sure.
okay, so you don't have to stick around.
Not a problem.
I'll be calling all the candidates either tonight or tomorrow morning.
Not a problem. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everybody.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you,
it.
Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Bye.
Who's? Is there somebody else that bowed out? I thought we had.
Artists can't make it,
Oh, okay.
and McNeil withdrew.
Yeah, I know Frank withdrew, but I didn't know artists.
Good evening.
Hey.
This one's picked out, is this mine?
You can tell. You have your choice of 3 mics.
Oh, thank you.
You don't have to stand up on the 4th.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening. Okay. We're asking the same questions of all the candidates, maybe with a few follow-ups, depending.
Seems about right.
Yeah. Okay, now my first question to you is, what do you know or what do you perceive the role of town administrator as?
Well, the town administrator is supposed to kind of work in conjunction with the elected officials and also the executive officials and departmental officials in the organization to put together kind of an overall plan for the town and work collaboratively with the departments and the political side of things. So it's almost like a go-between, but with some administrative managerial responsibilities for the departments underneath them.
Okay, Mary?
Hi.
How would you describe the ideal candidate for the town administrator position? In other words, what qualities do you believe would make an effective leader and town administrator?
Well, I mean, the leader, first and foremost, you need somebody who would command the type of respect or credibility at all levels throughout the town by the citizenry, by the elected officials, and by the employees that work for the town. So, number one, you need that. I don't necessarily know that you need somebody that has a overly gregarious personality in that job, but somebody who's incredibly organized. Somebody who is incredibly diligent and focused on the job at hand that needs to be done, and if you can find somebody who obviously is not easily distracted by extraneous things and can just focus on that job, I would think that right in and of itself would be a good start. Somebody who is energetic, because this is not an easy position. There are a lot of late nights. There are a lot of long days. There's things that come up that require additional effort beyond your 9 to 5. This is not a 9 to 5 job. So if you can find that person who has that energy level to keep up with the job as well, I think that would be a key component. Yeah.
Mike?
As a member of the search committee, you will be the face of Sturbridge, and most likely give the first impression of Sturbridge to our new town administrator. How would you present Sturbridge in a good light during the interview process?
Well, I mean, I've been in Sturbridge far less time than most of the people in this room, and probably most of the people that would be interviewing for this position. But what I can tell you is in the 8 years that I've been in the town, I have absolutely fallen in love with the town, with its people, with even with some of its warts. The reality is that we live in an awesome community. We are surrounded by wonderful people. When my wife and I moved here in 2010, we were engaged. We just expected this was going to be a transitional thing. We weren't planning on staying. I was working in Massachusetts, she was working in Connecticut. This is not an uncommon story for our town. And I'll never forget the day I was sitting there, we had just had our newborn, and our quaint little one-bedroom apartment on South Pond wasn't so quaint anymore with the newborn. And we were sitting at Annie's, and Caroline was in her little bassinet, and she and I just looked at each other and was like, I think this is home. Now, I grew up in Bangor, Maine. My wife grew up in Kennebunk. And so we're not big city, big town people, but we always felt like we were going to go gravitate towards Maine again. We wanted to get closer to home. But what we found was that same sense of community that we grew up with. And being that I was in Bangor, where it's a little bit larger city, 35,000 people. But I had access to all the resources that you would get in a town, and having like Hobbs Brook and having the grocery store and stuff like that real close kind of appealed to me. So I think that I'm kind of the face of the community that shows that this is a welcome place. This is a place when when people come here and experience it, they want to stay, and they want to build a family and build their lives here. Because I mean, up until that point, I had kind of just filtered around all of New England. I had lived in 5 of the 6 New England states, including Massachusetts and Natick, but didn't feel home until I kind of put my foot in the ground in Sturbridge and really fell in love with it. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I think that is a good start from an enthusiasm standpoint.
That's what I wanted to hear.
If you were put on the search committee, would you be open to hiring a professional headhunter to come in and give you guys candidates?
Well, I don't think we should be closed off to anything. So would I be open to it? Yes. I think obviously we have to look at all the variables, budget and whatnot, and make sure that it fits within what our needs are. But the reality is tapping into networks, whether it's a professional headhunter or working with the various state organizations for administrators or for finance managers or the like, and really expanding the tent that we can pull from is going to be important. So if that's the right way to go, and that's the most prudent thing to look at, I can't see as any reason why we would shut ourselves down from that. But if it comes at great expense and there are other options to us, I think we need to at least evaluate those first.
Thank you.
Okay, Priscilla?
Hi.
Hi.
Other than references that a candidate will submit, how would you vet the candidates?
Well, so I've worked with my company. I work for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, now Enterprise Fleet Management, for the past 23 years. In the last 14 years of that, I've been in a sales role. But prior to that, I was in a sales management role where I hired people and had to fully staff my offices. And one of the things that Enterprise is very bullish on is behavioral interviewing skills. So I think that other than references, you gotta press these people when you're interviewing them and ask them specifically about times where certain things have happened and what the result was. Not just ask for, give me your philosophies on this. That doesn't really tell us much. But if we can come up with a smart set of questions that deal with real life instances that we've dealt with in this town or we could potentially deal with in this town, and we can ask those questions in a thoughtful way so we can get real open-ended answers from that, not just yes and no, but real open-ended answers from these people, I think that would be in everybody's best interest, not only us, but also the candidate. Because, the reality is these people are coming out and we don't want them to fail. If it's the wrong candidate, we don't want to hire them, because that's going to be an incredible waste of time and resources for us, and going to be an incredible waste of their time, and also could be a black mark on their resume. We don't want to do that. We want to hire the person that can come in, embrace the town, and want to stay here for a period of time and really help to elevate our town. That's number one. So we have to, not only for us, but also for whatever candidates are there, make sure we're thoughtful about the questions that we're asking, because if we're not, then we're not only hurting ourselves, but we're also hurting them. And that's the last thing we want to do.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I'm on to my second question. We hear a lot about the need to compromise in government today. So in what ways would you be willing to compromise? And in what ways, perhaps, would you not be willing to compromise if you were a member of a search committee working as a team?
Well, I would be probably very stern if we were sacrificing on quality just because we thought that we needed to fill the position and put a body in place. That's probably my line right there. I've been on the other side of, I've been on the hiring side of filling a position just because I needed a body in my organization, and what that feels like and what that did to my team and my organization. And I promised myself that I would never go through that again. I knew it was the wrong hire, and I set them and myself up, and my team up to fail. So yes, I believe that compromise, you know, if somebody has an ideological difference than somebody else, but it's not, you know, it's not really the most critical idea or the critical issue at the table, well, let's work that out. Let's talk through it. Let's compromise, because it's not going to be all one way or all the other way. But I think that when it comes to, if it's almost like not universal that this person is the right fit for the town, I think we have to pause, because at the end of the day, we need to find the right person for the job, and if that takes a little bit extra time, a little bit extra effort, then I think we need to make sure that we are all willing to pull the weight and do the extra things that we need to find the right person to continue the great legacy of this town.
Okay, Mike?
It is important that the work of the search committee is confidential. Absolutely no leaks allowed. Please comment on your ability to keep your mouth shut until the final candidates are submitted to the Board of Selectmen.
We have a rule in my family that if I'm supposed to keep it confidential, you just have to tell me it's in the vault. So I guess I might come to you and say, just tell me it's in the vault. Because the reality is, if I'm not told that it's in the vault, then it's just for public consumption. But if something is in the vault, then it's in the vault. I mean, we just don't discuss it. I have looked at kind of my role or position within this committee if I'm appointed as I want to leverage my network to bounce things off of people, but I think that can still be done in a confidential way, obviously with the counsel of the people on the committee with me, and maybe the counsel of the Board of Selectmen. I have friends that are city administrators. I have friends that are in government all throughout the region that I was going to rely on their experience for things in general. Maybe not talk about people, but if there's something that needs to be kept in-house, okay, it is what it is. I mean, I would hope that if you spoke to anybody in my life about my character and my ability to keep a secret, that they would say that, you know, Eric doesn't talk out of school. Eric might talk, and talk a lot, but if I talked about something that somebody said is confidential, I would be very surprised if that came back. It's just, you know, it just isn't the way that I operate.
Yeah. The question was kind of to make sure that you knew that it's in the vault.
Okay, it's in the vault. All right, perfect. Then it's done. No problem.
What
It
type,
is.
what type of management style do you like? Do you like an open door policy, more structured?
Well, I think that everybody benefits from structure at the end of the day. If you have a willy-nilly approach to management, then things tend to get lost. Things tend to get missed. And those can be small things that don't have an impact, or those can be very large things. So I very much do like a structured management style. But do I like I work for a company where one of our core beliefs is our doors are always open. So I rarely have my office door closed. My management rarely has their office door closed. And even if it's a distraction to me in my daily duties, if somebody comes and knocks on their door and they need help, I will listen to what their need is. evaluate the necessity for me to deal with it at that point in time, and if it needs to be dealt with, deal with it, and if not, ask them to put something on my calendar for down the road. I had an instance that just happened 2 weeks ago where one of my colleagues came to me and it looked like he was going to get sick on my desk because he had lost a file on his computer, and I dropped everything, and within about 45 minutes we figured it out. I had other things going on. So, but I think that if I was so rigid in my structure and in my day, I probably would have done a disservice to this person who clearly needed help. So I think everybody, and that's part of leadership, right? You know, you need to, you can't be, no, this is all about me. No. Then you're a manager, you're not a leader. You know, you have to have some empathy, you have to have open doors, and you have to have time for people. But if you set the right structure around them, and you set expectations, and everything is clearly communicated, then everybody it knows what their job is, and everybody knows what the goal is and what needs to be done. That lends itself to having that, you know, open door policy, if you will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Priscilla?
I'm going to follow up my previous question about vetting candidates. Would you be willing to visit the site? Now, the site that your, let's say your top 3 come from, the town, the city, whatever. And when I say this, I don't mean in like an orchestrated visit where everybody knows you're coming, but you do talk to some employees, but you go to the local diner, you go to the local pub, you go to the newspaper, you go to the community and get a sense of the community and see what the community feels this person has accomplished. Would you be willing, and as part of the search committee, and have the search committee to do something like this?
I mean, I don't know that it could be done any other way. Honestly, I thought that would be kind of, the Jacks are better. That's the standard to get in the game. You have to talk to people that have dealt with those people, and you know, the behavioral questions that we were talking about, finding out what they're all about are great, and the references, those are all great, but everybody's going to provide references that make them look favorable, right? So you need to go and have some boots on the ground and sit there and listen to people, and if that person comes from Ashland, you need to go to Ashland, and if that person comes from Concord, New Hampshire, you need to go to Concord, New Hampshire. It is what it is. Does that mean that it wouldn't be it wouldn't create some additional steps or additional time that needs to be dedicated to it? But this is important. We're not just replacing a department head. And even if we were, it's still important, but it's from a gradation standpoint, this is the titular head of the administration of the town, if you will. So we need to make sure that the right person is put in place so everybody within the town and everybody in the community feels good about it. And I think that would be a key point, a key part of any vetting process.
Thank you.
Okay, Eric, what makes you unique for this search committee?
Well, unique. I don't know that there's anything overly unique about me. I'm the only guy wearing a bow tie, I can guarantee you that.
And suspenders.
And suspenders. But that, you know, now that's been 5 years running. I think I come from a place where I'm probably one of the younger people that would be putting in for this position in general. I might be wrong there, but I think I come from a different generation than the typical person that would be sitting on this position. I'm by no way green. I'm 45 years old, but you know, typically I see a lot of these committee staff with people that, you know, are a little bit older and have different perspectives on things. So I think I would bring a unique perspective. I have 2 young kids, one in the school system. My family is put our roots down here. We're not lifelong Sturbridge residents. I'm guessing that a portion of your candidate applications are those types of people who have been here forever, so I do bring a different perspective. But the reality is, I'm a kid from Bangor, Maine, who was brought up in a family business, who was taught from a very young age that hard work and dedication is the way to do well in this life, and you need to give back to your community. And when I moved to Sturbridge, I started to want to look into those things, and I would do it in a very small way by going to town meeting and voting and paying attention. But now that I have kids in the school system, and I've been a taxpayer for 6 years, and all of those things, you kind of get a different perspective than when you're just living in an apartment in the Back Bay and you're just living your life. So probably my youthful inexperience is a differentiator. I don't know, it's a great differentiator, but the reality is I can pull from I like to pull from people, and with all due respect to things being in the vault, I like to ask questions. I like to see what people are looking for. I would go out and talk to the business leaders of the town. I would talk to the members that just in my community and outside of my community within the town. What are they looking for? I would want to sit with every one of you, some of the department heads within the town. What were I guess soon-to-be former administrator's strengths? What was his weaknesses? What areas would you like to see brought, improved in the town? Because the reality is nobody's perfect, and there are things that people are important to people, and by having those conversations, we may find that there's 2 or 3 things that none of us had even thought of that are truly important to the people of the town. So. That's very long-winded, I apologize.
That's okay.
The teacher in you wanted to shut me down 5 minutes ago, so
No,
I apologize.
no. Teachers, listen. And it's amazing what they're told,
I imagine,
particularly with the younger children.
I imagine,
Out of
yes.
the mouths of
Mary?
babes. Yeah.
You have to keep things in the vault, right?
Yes. Well,
My wife-
sometimes what they tell you, it's not even
Yeah.
close to being.
My wife's a guidance counselor in a high school, so you imagine the stuff that she has to keep in the vault.
Yeah, right. Mary?
Okay, I always preface it by saying, I'm not saying this would happen, but how would you deal with a committee member who might be disrespectful to other members or an applicant, or perhaps ask an inappropriate question, whether inadvertent or not, or violate confidentiality in the process?
Well, I mean, I guess there's all kinds of grades within that. So depending on the severity, I think there's always a personal, direct conversation is the best way to deal with things first and foremost. Now, that said, if there were things inappropriately said that was in a harassing nature or in a threatening nature or in a violent nature, that's different, right? But if there was an inappropriate question based off of, X, Y, or Z that doesn't really get up to that level, I think a personal conversation at first starts it. And then from there, you kind of, I would have to rely on counsel, if you will, if there's a more serious nature, to go back to, you folks and whoever else you would direct me to figure out if there's something that more seriously needs to be done. But I've always felt, and I've always had the most respect for people who, if they have an issue, came to me directly. So I always go to people directly because it's just the way that I would prefer to be treated myself.
Okay, Chase?
How important is the longevity of a candidate, making sure they stay in Sturbridge?
Oh, wait a minute, did I skip
No,
mine?
no, I would have said my third question was asked and answered, so I pass.
Okay, thank you.
How important is the longevity of a candidate and making sure they stay here?
So ever since I saw the posting, that was probably the most important thing that I was thinking through in my mind. Because on one hand, we may have some candidates that are coming through that have a vast amount of experience that might be looking for this to be their last gig as they head towards retirement. And depending on the level of experience they have and the quality of the candidate, we'd love to see that, somebody who's going to spend the next 10, 15 years and then go off into the sunset and maybe groom their next candidate or replacement, right? We'd love that. But at the same time, we have to be realistic about, we're a community of 10,000 and we may end up with some younger candidates that are looking to build their resume. And I think that we can't just out of hand dismiss those people because of the fear that they're going to build their resume here and move on someplace else. So I would love to have somebody who I could sit there and say, they're going to be here for 10 years. They're going to be here for 15 years. They're going to retire here. But the reality is we have to look at the pool of candidates. And if we have somebody who's a rock star, an up-and-coming rock star, that's the assistant town manager from Newton, city manager from Newton, and they want to come out here to have that town administrator title on their resume because they're ready for the job and they can do a great job, but they might only be here for 5 years, or they might only be here for 4 years. Well, I think part of that as community members is we need to make them want to stay and encourage them that this is the place where they want to retire, and they might only be 35, and yes, but you can grow your family here. And if they move on after 4 or 5 years and we're doing this again down the road, well, that's not the best scenario. But if they do a rock star job for us during that period of time, I don't know that we can necessarily feel that's a disservice to the community or to our citizens. So that was probably the first question I thought to myself, like, what are we looking for here? And are we going to be okay with accepting a rock star that might leave us, but will put us in a real strong foothold? Or are we going to look for somebody who's more secure just because we don't want to risk losing them? I don't know that we go that route. It would be great if we had that former rock star who wants something smaller and could put that foundation and then 10 or 15 years retire. Love that. If we can't find that, then I think we need to find the best candidate. And then if we find the best candidate, we have to make them love our community and want to stay.
Thank you.
Okay, Priscilla?
Actually, he answered what I would have asked, your background and the qualities in a town administrator, but you've already answered that in so many ways, so I'll pass.
Okay. Eric, are you familiar, or how familiar are you with the town charter?
I'm not very familiar with it. I did talk with Bruce on the FinCom at town meeting this year and talked that there's going to be, I believe, a review of the charter coming up based on our population growth, or
No,
it could,
every 5 years.
okay. So I know that's coming up. I'm not that much more familiar than that. I just know that there will be a review coming up. So whatever candidate we find, we're obviously going to want somebody who at least has a foundational understanding of what a charter review is, and how that process goes, and all of that.
Yeah, because in the charter, it lists the town administrator's responsibilities and appointing and everything. So it'd be worthwhile if you get on the committee to look at that. It's
Absolutely. And that's, you don't know what you don't know. So, those are, if I was appointed to the committee, those are things that, okay, what do I need to read? Who do I need to talk to? There's business leaders within this community that, and civic leaders within this community that I'm sure I have never met, and if I passed in Stop and Shop, I wouldn't know. And that's part of I've only been here for 8 years. But if somebody says, hey, that's Mary Dowling, why don't you go and introduce yourself? Guess what? I'm a networker. Okay, hi, I'm Eric Gaspar. Nice to meet you. So I have no problems having a conversation with anybody. And And I have no problem sitting there and reading through the charter if that's what needs to be done, in order to have a grander understanding of what we're physically looking for.
Okay, anything else from the board? Well, thank you, Eric. You don't have to stick around.
Okay.
I'll be calling people either tonight or possibly tomorrow morning. Is this your home phone or your cell, the 347-9475?
That is home? Yeah.
Is that the best to,
That's typically the best number, as long as it's before 8:30 at night, you know, the
oh, I
phone.
thought you were going to say before 8:30 in the morning. 'cause
No.
I don't
Before
do-
eight-
I don't do that.
But if it's going to be tomorrow, I can give you my cell phone. It's area code 781-844-2339. And I'll be heading up to me.
Yeah, because by the time I get home tonight, it'll be so,
Yeah.
possibly tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak with you all. If I can help in any way, I would love to be able to help in this fashion. I think you would be well-served to have me as part of this committee. But the reality is, if not, I have full faith that you folks will choose the right group of people to go ahead and fill this position. And I just want to thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Eric.
Please?
He just
Oh.
stepped out for a second. He'll be right back.
Yeah, we can sit and stare at each other. Hi, Jim.
Jim.
Chad is back, I guess that's why she's.
Okay, now we'll be asking you the same questions we asked the other candidates, and maybe with a little clarification after some of the answers. Okay? Priscilla?
Other than honesty and integrity, which are expectations, what is the most important quality or skill that you would look for in a town administrator?
It's tough to narrow that down to one, but you would have to have, as a personality characteristics, you would have to have interpersonal skills to deal with at different levels with the government level people and with the citizens of the town and the employees of the town. But the two you mentioned are the most important.
Right. That's why I said that those are expectations.
Right.
Other than that, yeah, thank you.
And beyond that, typical qualifications is, knowledge and hopefully some experience in operations of a government.
Thanks.
Chase?
Jim, if you were put on the search committee, would you be open to a professional company coming in like a headhunter and giving you guys candidates?
I would think that would almost be essential, Chase.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I think that would almost be essential to have that, if you're going to get the best candidate. That's been my experience.
Would that, Jim, be opposed to the search committee doing most of the work? Just,
No, I wouldn't want the headhunter to I would want the search committee to do the interviewing and the research on the people and doing the reference checking and all that. But in terms of getting qualified resumes, I would think that would be very helpful
okay. So that's as a first step.
as a first step.
Okay.
Just to provide the volume
Right.
and let the committee wade through the details.
Okay, Mike?
As a member of the search committee, you will be the face of Sturbridge, and most likely, the first impression that our next town administrator will have of the town. How will you present Sturbridge in a good light as part of the interview process?
Well, I would point to the quality of life in the town as it exists right now, and I would emphasize that we have a very high quality of life and services and so forth, and that the expectation is that that would continue, and that this is a good place to live, basically, and we'd expect it to remain that way.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, Mary?
So my question is related to Priscilla's, but maybe a little bit different. So what qualities do you believe make an effective leader? What qualities do you look for in a leader? And in this case, a leader who is a town administrator?
Well, aside from what we've already talked about, he has to be transparent in everything he does. So, no hidden agendas. Has to be firm without being authoritative in his approach. Has to be prepared. Has to know what to say he doesn't know, but he'll find out. So I guess that gets into the honesty part of it. Has to be hardworking, has to be available at all times, or reasonable times. The citizens. Does that cover what you want?
No, thank you.
Okay, Jim, what do you perceive as the role of the town administrator?
That's a pretty broad question, but I would say he has to be the facilitator of carrying out the will of the Board of Selectmen and taking care of the day-to-day mechanics of what this body decides, the essential functions that have to be performed. So in that sense, he's the administrative arm of the Board of Selectmen, carrying out what the charter calls for and what you folks decide has to be done for the town. Because after all, you're his boss.
Mm-hmm. Of course, now that you mention that, the charter, are you familiar with the charter?
Not as much as I should be.
That's okay.
None of us are.
Seems to be the, well, except for one candidate. Because in the charter, it lists the responsibilities and duties of the town administrator.
And
So-
perhaps I should have read that.
No, that's okay. You're not the only one that hasn't. Bet you that not too many people in town have read it. And it's in the annual report every year at the back. Okay,
I
Priscilla?
have read through the bylaws.
It's even thicker.
Yeah, and more confusing. Priscilla?
Jim, how would you vet the candidates other than the resumes they provide or the references they provide?
And when you say other than the references,
Like, when you get a candidate and they bring, they'll give you a list of 10 people to contact, I'm not interested in that. How would you vet them? Because they're going to give you who they know is going to give you a stellar review. I'm not interested in that piece. How else are you going to vet them to find out who exactly they are?
well, if the committee does its job and asks questions in the appropriate way, and works together as a team, you can flesh out a four-flusher pretty quickly, because they'll contradict themselves in the answers, and so I think that's critical. As long as the committee itself coordinates their questioning, you can flush out somebody that's giving you a song and a dance.
Thank you.
Okay. Chase?
Jim, what management style do you like? Do you like an open door policy, a more structure? What type of management do you like?
I like structure, but you have to be accessible. But I like a more structured setup. I was used to that. That's of my work career, it was very structured, but people were accessible, and that's critical. You know, someone might say the door is open if you call me first and tell me you want to come in and see me. Don't just walk in on me. But I believe in accessibility, but I believe in structure as well.
Okay, Mike?
It's important that the work of the search committee is confidential. Absolutely no leaks allowed. Please comment on your ability to keep your mouth shut until the final candidates are submitted to the Board of Selectmen.
In many of the positions I've held, both in my employment and outside of my employment over the years, call for absolute confidentiality. There are things going on in my life right now in other organizations I'm associated with that if you're not in the room when those discussions take place amongst 8 or 10 people, nobody knows what's being discussed. And I'm used to that in my employment and in other things I am currently involved in as well.
Very good.
Mary?
Okay. We hear a lot about the need to compromise in government today. In what ways would you be willing to compromise as a member of a committee? And are there ways that you would not be willing to compromise? And if you could comment on that.
Well, I could compromise in areas where someone may not have areas of expertise, or as many areas of expertise as what might be most desirable if they could acquire those skills. Where I would not compromise, if I have the least hint that somebody is being less than forthright in any way, that's a game ender for me. If someone is withholding information, interview is over. That could be a strength or weakness depending on how you look at it, but that's.
Thanks.
Okay. Jim, what do you think is a unique quality or something unique about you that you'll be bringing to this committee if you get appointed?
I don't know if it's unique, but I don't stop working until the job is done. And sometimes I forget that the job is done and I keep working. No, I'm just, I would say when it comes to, once I start to do something, I'm pretty relentless in terms of making sure it's done completely and done correctly. You know, and if I don't feel confident that can happen, if it's beyond my control, I'll disassociate with the activity because.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
Okay. We keep asking the same questions for the people watching. It's like, oh my God.
That one again.
I know, exactly. I just want to preface it that I don't anticipate this happening. But how would you deal with a committee member, a colleague, who is disrespectful to another committee member or perhaps an applicant, or asks an inappropriate question, or violates confidentiality in the process? How would you deal with that type of co-committee member, co-member of the committee?
I suppose it would depend on the exact circumstance at the time. I would either deal with it confidentially as a side issue. If the situation called for it, I'd call them out on it right on the spot. And, but I think there's a way to deal with it appropriately. If it happened in the middle of you could call for an adjournment and deal with the individual. You could suspend the activity that was going on at that time, but that's just not acceptable. And I wouldn't let it slide. I just wouldn't let it slide. I'd call them on it.
Thanks.
Okay. My third question on the qualities that you would like to see in a town administrator was already asked and answered, so I'll pass.
Chase? Excuse me, Chase.
Jim, how important is the longevity of a candidate to you, the fact that they want to be here for a while?
If you had asked me that at another point in my life, I might have said it was more important, but I don't feel that it's that important. It'd be nice if Leon would stay, but it's a fact of life that if you're going to get somebody that's really motivated and going to be a go-getter, You have to ask yourself, is this the end of the line for their career, or do they want to keep moving up that ladder? He obviously is moving on to Weston, and that's just, you know, that's a bigger town, it's more income, it's a career advancement. So I would say that it's not important that we have someone with great longevity, because if they have great longevity, then they're satisfied. And if they're satisfied, they become complacent. And you don't want to have somebody that you have to light a fire under their chair all the time to get them to do stuff. And if they really want to move up the food chain and move on to bigger and better things, then they're going to have to prove themselves here every day. And what have you done for us today, this week, this year? And if they do enough things, someone will come after them and try to get them to go somewhere else, and that's not a bad thing. But if all they want to do is stay here, well, we could be doomed to mediocrity. I mean, that's the way it goes. So that's how I feel.
Okay, Priscilla?
Yeah, I'm going to follow up with the vetting question by asking you, would you be willing to visit the community the top three applicants, for example, came from? Now, when I say visit the community, I'm not looking for the show that's going to be put on because they know you're coming. I'm looking for visiting the local diner, the local pub, maybe for
bet.
lunch.
Go get a
talking to
haircut
people.
in their barber shop.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I'm talking
You
about.
bet.
Would you be willing?
Go to a local diner and have a cup of
Exactly.
coffee. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the best way to find out about people.
That's absolutely right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Been there, done that.
Okay, did everyone get their questions in? Because I know we combined a few.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Your phone number, is that the house number or your cell number?
Which one do you?
The 347
That's the home phone.
347. Okay. Tonight, but most likely tomorrow morning.
Great. Thank you
Okay?
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
So it's nice if I have the phone number, you call the right place.
After the last candidate, can we take a 2-minute break?
Oh, sure.
But I can wait.
Yeah, that's okay. Mother Nature is Mother Nature. Speaking of that, the poor people down the Carolinas,
Awful.
Mother Nature's.
I would be out of that state.
yeah.
Evacuate, I'd evacuate.
We don't expect you to stand at the mic.
Nah.
Okay, now, we've been asking the same questions of all the candidates, and sometimes we may have a follow-up. Okay? Now, John, what do you see as the role of the town administrator?
Well, he or she is your executive officer, and in various ways in command of the town with the guidance and support of the selectmen. I would hope that it's a person that takes advice readily without prejudice to anybody, and maintains a positive attitude toward things. I think sometimes we get polarized around a lot of questions that come up one way or the other, whether it's at town meeting, whether it's here, and I would hope that somebody who fills that position can do so fairly and in a balanced way for the town's benefit.
Okay. My second question, kind of, I just will ask it, it goes along with that. How familiar are you with the charter?
With the charter, limited.
Because in there, it has the job description and all the duties and responsibilities of the town administrator. So if you do get on the committee, I would advise reading it.
Yeah. The reason that I had sent in an application was that I feel a need to speak for two different constituencies. On one, I've done a lot of work, both in the town and in general, with emergency responders. We're fortunate in this community to have some really excellent fire, police, and EMS people that I've come to know over a few years, worked with in terms of planning and other kinds of exercises, and I just want to see that tradition continue. And on the second piece, I live in town in the condominiums up behind the theater here, Crescent Gate. And it's a 55 and older community. It's a 40B community, so we have a mixed group of people. And I would like to see somebody who is able to understand the concerns of senior citizens and to provide the kinds of services they need. Now that mixes with fire and police as well, because we plow our own roads, we fix our own water systems, we do all that ourselves. But we don't have children that go to the school system, but we are a great user of fire, police, and EMS. There's no week that goes by that we don't have an ambulance there, or a fire truck there, or a police officer there. And I can't say enough of positive things about those emergency responders, whether it's coming in and helping someone back into a chair, or doing an evaluation for medical care and transporting them. It's just been an excellent response from the town, and I want to make sure that continues, because it's an important part of supporting people who are senior citizens that have a number of concerns like that. So those are the two things. I'd like to, be there to support and continue to support first responders, and there to continue to support senior citizens throughout the community, not just in the building I live in, but the community as well.
Okay, thank you. Priscilla?
Other than references, how would you vet a candidate for a town administrator?
Well, I'm not sure if you have a formal process for going through that.
No, I'm asking you.
Well, having gone through that with volunteers in a variety of different settings, I've used private companies to do investigations. When you're processing volunteers, and whether it's Red Cross or whether it's in the medical places where we've used volunteers, you have to be really careful to make sure people that you're sending out to represent you, and people that and when you're hiring a volunteer, you're not paying them any salary, but in essence you're hiring them. So you have to be extra careful to make sure that that's an appropriate check. In some cases, we've used a separate company to do background checks. In some cases where we had police involved, we used the police to do checks, criminal justice checks. And in some cases, depending on the roles for people, people gave us a hand scan at the police department, which they then ran through the NCIC base. If you're sending a volunteer into somebody's home, you have to be sure that that person has no history of sexual abuse or malfeasance in any way, and that they're of good character when you send them. I would think anybody that gets to this level in being considered by this committee has probably been vetted a number of times, probably in other settings. And unless something's happened to change that, you're probably getting a group of good candidates already. How you choose to go beyond that, it's your prerogative to do that. I wouldn't want to, but I think it's an important thing to make sure that whoever you select has that good character and good moral standing, and won't do anything to embarrass the town or to the detriment of its citizens.
Thank you.
Okay, Chase?
Would you be open to hiring a professional company to bring candidates to you on the search committee, like a headhunter?
The companies that I know of charge an awful lot of money. I've watched it happen, not in the town manager type of selection, but in the superintendent of schools selection in a variety of different communities. They've done worldwide searches for the best candidate, and strangely enough, that they've come up with someone from within the system or someone who came from the next town. And to get to that point had cost the city or town thousands of dollars worth of staff time from that firm. So I'm not a great believer in that. I think you go through an advertising process. I think those people who would be interested in coming here would be watching different journals and other things where the advertisements might appear. And then it's up to your wisdom to choose who you think is the best. Now, if a private company is able to do the vetting as well, and they're able to somehow cross all those, dot all those I's and cross all those T's, it might be worth that to get that professional advice and suggestion. But my experience has been that they charge a lot of money, and sometimes you don't get what you're paying for.
Thank you.
Mike?
As a member of the search committee, you will be the face of Sturbridge and likely a first impression for our next town administrator. How would you project or present Sturbridge in a good light during the interview process?
My God, I hope I'm not the face of Sturbridge.
Don't say
Oh,
that.
don't.
You know.
You represent a rather significant group in Sturbridge, so.
Yeah, I would hope that we would all work hard to find someone who's good, someone who's going to come and do an excellent job, and do our best to show Sturbridge in its best points. We sometimes fight and argue with each other. We go to town meetings and we take different votes, and sometimes we listen to people, sometimes we don't listen to people. It's like a family. You sort of fight it out. But there are so many good things about Sturbridge, you know. We spent 35 years living in Brimfield. You know, my wife and I grew up in Worcester, became teachers in Worcester, and then moved out to Brimfield. We did it on a snowy day when they had canceled school, and after we bought the house, we said, how do we get back to Worcester? We don't even know where this is. So we lived in Brimfield for 35 years, and by choice, we decided we wanted to come to Sturbridge because it was a really good place to be. We looked very carefully. We looked at government, school systems, you know, all the other kinds of things that for us were important, and we chose to come here. And I would hope that someone coming here, not just looking to make a dollar or a reputation or something else, but somebody who could appreciate that same family feeling that Sturbridge offers. And it's our job, if we're on the committee, to do that, to encourage that person and give them the same feeling we had when we were looking to come. We had, in Brimfield, we had a single house. And you get to a point in life where you got to look down the road and say, do I want to shovel snow and cut the grass and plow snow and whatever? You know, maybe it's time in life to look other places. So we looked. We looked in a number of different towns around, and we chose Sturbridge for that reason. We had spent a lot of time in Sturbridge. Our son, now grandson, have gone to the school system here. We like Sturbridge. It's a really town that we're happy with, and I would really like to see us share that with whoever it is that we're trying to convince to come here and do good things for us.
Okay, Mary?
We hear a lot about the need to compromise in government today. What ways would you be willing to compromise as a member of the committee? And are there ways that you would not compromise? And if you could comment on that.
Yeah. I'm the great compromiser. I don't believe there's anything to be gained by by people tearing each other apart. If I have something to say, and occasionally at town meetings I'll have something to say, I want to say it, passionately, I want to ask people to consider what I'm saying. And, when it's all over, win, lose, or draw, it's done, and you move on. I can't see any, there needs to be a way to compromise and to find solutions to things, maybe creative solutions to things, but I can't see anything serving on any committee where I would be so hard and fast. Well, I take that back. I guess I'm not in favor of child molesters. I'm not in favor of people who were criminals or, whatever. But, we all have our own way of seeing the world, and I think there's a way for people to talk things through, figure things out without taking hard and fast positions, so that you have the chance to come to a conclusion that, win-win for everybody. And, my wife and I have been married for 51 years, and somebody said, how do you stay married for 51 years? Because you make concessions, nobody butts heads against each other. Somehow you try and find a way. Even if you have, bad feelings about something that's being suggested, you try and find a way to compromise and solve things. And it's worked out for us for 51 years, and I can't see me changing my way of doing business, or whatever it is, unless it's something really egregious that the person brings to the table. And then I would not probably be a happy camper with that. I would probably be quite passionate about it. But if there are ways, and it's not, I'm not thinking about financial things, or I'm not thinking about other kinds of things, but the personality piece I think is really crucial. And because somebody's political background or somebody's feelings about something, my thought is to find some way to find a way to resolve it and to make some concessions. That's just my style. Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Okay, John, what do you think is unique about you that you would be bringing to this committee?
Well, again, the reason I sent in a letter volunteering, one that I've spent a lot of time in the emergency management community. For the last few months, I've started a new job in the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency as a program planner for them. Prior to that, I had been an emergency manager for a public health department in Connecticut, and I had served on the Board of Health here. So I guess I bring some expertise both in emergency management and in health and other things, and a close relationship with emergency responders. You got a great fire department now. You got a really good EMS department now. Police department is assertive but not aggressive. You watch Chief Sword's people's out on the street, and do they do traffic stops? Yeah. They come through our parking lot once a night, and they swing through and check the cars that are there. They're not sitting at Dunkin' Donuts having a coffee and talking to each other. They're out patrolling, but they're always polite. They're always well thought of. Even people who've been stopped and ticketed are comment on that kind of thing. It's one of the things that you say about, Sturbridge is a nice place to live because of those kinds of things. Everybody treats people nicely. You come into the town hall here, go to the town clerk's office, you get treated nicely. You come into the selectmen's meeting, you get treated nicely. It's a good place to live, and I hope that we can attract some good person to come here and to be a town administrator.
Okay.
The other piece, let me finish that, is senior citizens. That the average age in our building is now creeping up toward 80. So it was planned as an active retirement community, well, there's less activity now and more health concerns now. And a lot of the people who've been there, and we've been there since the very beginning, who've come and left and gone into other facilities, they've passed away, and we've had new people come on. But we've always been able to have a very positive climate and just a good situation for senior citizens. A lot of our people use the senior center, and they're there all the time at the senior center. I would like to see our seniors get more involved in town government, get more involved in many of the things that right now it's easier to sit on, and I have this thing about rocking chairs. We have rocking chairs on our front porch, and it's easier for a lot of people to come and sit on the rocking chair and not do anything. And I keep harassing my colleagues, get up and do something, go play tennis or, do something else. There's a role for senior citizens in town government and in town affairs and town activities. For God's sakes, come to the town meetings, participate in government, get out and vote, every day, and, ta-da, I got my voting thing, I try to be sure that I vote in every election that gets held, primary election, regular election, town meetings, whatever. That's part of what I'd like to see for senior citizens, a positive role in town government somewhere. Not necessarily sitting up there, but somehow getting involved, not just watching the meetings on television. Go to the meetings, speak your piece, get involved in some part of the community. And they have a wide range of experience, bring it to the town so that the town gets to benefit from that. So both the senior citizen issue and the emergency responder issue. And, with or without being on the search committee, I'll still be around pushing those kinds of issues one way or the other.
Okay. Priscilla?
I just have one more question. In light of what I asked, a follow-up too about vetting the candidates, would you be willing to visit the community they came from? And when I say visit, I'm not looking for a pre-orchestrated visit. I'm looking for visiting the local diner, the local coffee shop, the local pub, the newspaper, the community in general, getting a feel, going to the senior center, getting a feel for the community to find out who this candidate really is.
Yeah, I'd love that, but I'm not interested in going to Oregon. I think there are enough within some short
Reasonable.
commuting distance here that there are enough qualified candidates in New England. But I'd be happy to go anywhere and beat the bushes and talk to people and get feelings. Now, the bad part of that is then how do you evaluate those kinds of things? You're going to the barber shop, to the coffee shop, to the, wherever, and you're kind of catching who's ever there, and the question of does that represent what they really feel about their town and about the person who's been there. So I don't have any problem doing it. It's just, I think you have to take notes. You have to be careful on what you're seeing, usually there are, people can be either happy or unhappy with the town administrator for a variety of reasons. I'd like to see, and they know this person might be leaving, so that might color the kind of response you're going to get. But I would hope to come away with a balanced feeling from people, and then to bring that back and share it with the committee. I think it's better if you go in twos, so if two people went out to that community where that person is, so that you can both get a sense and bring that back to the committee. It's a positive thing. But again, you've got to be careful how you evaluate that, because you may find people that would be very positive about somebody on vacation that week, and you didn't catch them, or they didn't go to the coffee shop that day, or whatever. But I would like to go to meetings of some of the boards and committees and see, what their feelings are, and maybe informally ask some of those people for feedback on, the fairness of this candidate and how they were able to work or not work with them. There's also a sort of raw edge to this in some of the communities around us, and those of you who know the politics of some of the communities around us. People have been hired who you wouldn't want to have hired. I'm thinking more in the education field than anything else, that there are people who've come and gone. I think our colleagues in Southbridge have had 9 superintendents or something in the last number of years, and 8 high school principals, and there are people who've come here to this area that you sort of question their qualifications, and whether they're willing to come because they will work for less money, or whatever the rationale. You want to get the best quality people you can get to give the citizens the best quality that they can have in terms of quality of life. And whatever we can do to make that happen, I cheer you on to get the best person. And, my experience has been with the last 2 town administrators. I've gotten along with both of them very well. They've been very straightforward and honest, and I've never had a problem in any way or other. And I would like to see that continue. I've never felt a problem coming into the town manager's office and poking my head in and saying, hey, let me just ask you a question about this, and got a good response from both of those. So I think we're losing Leon going on to bigger and better things, I guess, or greater pastures or something. But, there are other really talented people out there, and if we can do something to bring one of those people here, that would be a great thing for the town.
Thank you.
Okay, Chase?
How important, if at all, is longevity of a candidate to you? The fact that they can stay here for a long period of time?
Well, I would hope they come and stay for a fairly long time. When you look at longevity across many of the executive positions in government, 3 years seems to be a magic number. People come, first year they kind of learn about the town, the second year they have an agenda to do some things, and then the third year they're, sort of looking as to, what's on the horizon now, and they're moving on. I would think if you can attract a quality person and keep them for 5 years, or at least 5 years, then you're going to get some real solid production out of that. First year is going to be a learning kind of curve, and then if you've got 3 or 4 years in the middle where they can really move on some kind of an agenda and get stuff done, and everybody's going to be looking sooner or later. Everybody wants to be president of the Senate or God knows whatever kind of thing. Take some other position in government, whether it's for more money or more responsibility or in a bigger town or whatever. But if you could hold them for 5 years in a position, not that you're going to hold a gun to their head, but that they want to come here and they want to stay for 5 years. Once you get beyond the 5 years, I think, things get a little rusty sometimes, and, maybe you need a new voice at the helm type of thing. But 3 years, I think, is too short. 5 years gives them a chance to get a block of time to actually accomplish the kind of things you want them to do. And I think it comes from this group to set those parameters. If you want to, I don't know, build a new something or other, from the time you start talking about it and planning it and costing it out and figure if you can do it, and putting that into that 4 or 5 year package, and that you got somebody for that period of time. I think that's a good thing. Once you get to 3 years, then you're really having a year and a half's worth of solid work on what it is you want to do in terms of priorities. And I just don't see that as enough, quite frankly.
Okay, Mike?
It is important that the work of this search committee is confidential. Absolutely no leaks allowed. Please comment on your ability to keep your mouth shut until the final candidates are submitted to the Board of Selectmen.
I have some friends who call me the confessor, only because a lot of people share, and I was a guidance counselor before, and I was a psychologist at the hospital emergency room level before. And so I have a lot of people who've told me lots of things, and I just can't bring myself to share that kind of stuff. I've also done public affairs for Red Cross at the national level. I'm comfortable. I've worked with the national press, both television and print media. No, I'm very measured in what I say, and if it's confidential and you say it's confidential. End of story. And I can't see anything to be gained by leaking. That's the other thing. Whether it's you get some kind of personal praise for having leaked something, or you get some kind of medal for having leaked something. If you're involved in a group process and people say, well, this is confidential, you can't, it's confidential. There's no discussion around confidential. It's confidential.
Good.
Okay, Mary?
Okay, I'm not saying that this would occur, but how would you deal with a committee member that might be disrespectful to a fellow committee member or an applicant, or a person who might ask an inappropriate question or violate confidentiality in the process? What would be your approach to that colleague?
I would hope, with you choosing carefully, that won't happen, that you'll have however many good people that can work together. But are you going to use a chairperson for this search committee, or, how
Well,
do you?
it would be up to the search committee to pick a chair for the committee.
Okay. Then if somebody were a chairperson, and they're going to have to work with the committee to set up whatever rules that fit your constraints, because it's your committee, really, the town's committee, but whatever constraints they come with, then they're going to have to set up those rules for the committee and live within those rules. In terms of treating each other civilly and with respect, I just think that that's critical, and that's the basis of everything we do. People who yell and shout and pound the table just really, I have a problem with that. I would try and settle things by discussion. Let's stop whatever it is we're discussing that's caused the problem, and let's talk about the issue and how we solve the issue through discussion. Now, if it gets beyond that, especially in the confidentiality area, we, I would think, would have to come back and say the committee has a problem because we can't operate in a fishbowl. And, if somebody has violated some of the rules that we've set up, then we need guidance on how to, does that person get removed? Does that person get sanctioned? And we've tried to mediate it, we've tried to solve it, and not been able to do that. And then we're going to need some kind of, not about a particular person, your guidance, but in terms of process. How do we proceed now, because we've got this impasse with a particular member or two members or whatever it is. That kind of thing is uncomfortable. The final straw is when a person who's on the committee does something egregious to one of the candidates that you're considering. I just think that's above and beyond the pall. Everybody has to be treated with respect. You may not think that this person is a good fit for the job. You may think that they're terrible, but when they come into Sturbridge and they come into this process to be interviewed, they have to be treated with respect, no matter what the issues are. You call them, I'm famous for using first names, but other people may be more comfortable with, Mr. and Mrs., Doctor, whatever it is. But they have to be treated with respect when they come here. Because if you don't treat them up front with respect, what's going to happen after you hire them? Where is this going to go with that? And if the goal is to keep them for a bunch of years, then it has to start from the first interview onward, and it has to be a community that gives respect and supports that point of view.
Okay, now, is there anyone who didn't get their 3 in? Because we did combine some. Chase, did you get yours?
What type of management
Yeah.
style do you prefer? Do you like an open door policy or more structured?
Well, a little bit of both. I don't want the door to be so open that nothing ever gets done. I want someone who's willing to listen to both sides of an argument, have their own point of view based on their own technical competence. I mean, you have taxation issues, you have, all sorts of financial issues that the town faces. Hopefully that person brings those skills to the community. But in the long run, I'd like someone who is open to discussion before they have to make a decision. The one I have problems with, or the kind of management style I have problems with, is the person who makes a decision based on the last person they talk to. People come in the office, they say their piece and they leave, and somebody else comes in the office and they say their piece and they leave. Somebody else comes in the office, they say their piece and they leave, and that becomes the decision. I'd like somebody who has a structured approach to problem solving, that they use a logical process. They're open to hear everybody's side and then use their own technical expertise to make a decision and to make recommendations to the board. But not open enough to just keep pushing things off and pushing things off and pushing things off. At some point, you have to make a decision and then live with it. And that's something that somebody's own personal management style is going to dictate. So when you hire somebody, you better be really clear that that's a management style that you can live with.
Okay, everyone all set, or?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, John. Now, you don't have to stick around, and we do have your phone number, so I probably won't be calling people tonight. Later, probably tomorrow morning to let you know
Started
the
at 4 o'clock
results.
this morning, going up to Concord, New Hampshire to do a training program for FEMA, and 2.5 hours back to make the 6:30 deadline here. So, yeah, if you call me, I won't be answering. So, well, it's been a long day.
Thank you, John.
Thanks so much. Thanks for
Thank
your
you for
courtesy.
your interest.
Thanks, John.
Okay, I did,
You taking a break? Mary asked for a
Well-
break. Oh,
yes,
okay.
why? What was?
No, Mary had asked for a break for a minute.
Oh, yeah, no, but I just wanted to say that
You too.
I assumed the audience at home knew who we were talking to, but all we did was call them by their first name.
Oh, we should read it.
So, for those people at home, in the order of appearance tonight, we had Bill Haggerty, Bob Levy, Jay Patel, Eric Gaspar, James Waddick, and John Degnan. And my apologies, I just assumed. Okay, we will be taking a 3-minute break.
3 minutes, wow.
Well,
Yeah. Don't rush.
As I said, I was on the committee and I worked with him, and he was really organized and didn't waste a minute and was very amenable working with people. So I'd like to make a motion to appoint Bill Haggerty.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Priscilla?
I agree that he has he's got the background and all, but from my perspective, I would like to open it to new people, since we've had so many applicants, which I was amazed and pleased to see. I'd like to give other residents that opportunity as well, because I do believe they all have a great background to bring to the table, and I think that they could all do a great job, and, no matter who got picked. So I would like to see newer people.
Okay, we still have 2 other slots, but I do think, and having been on that committee, there is a lot of work to do even to get off the ground, because we don't have town administrator to help. Our assistant has been in the office a very short while, and it does take quite a lot of groundwork to get it going. And I know the committee doesn't want to be rushed, but we don't want to waste too much time. Okay, any more discussion?
I was
Mary?
just going to comment. I think that's a very legitimate desire, but the fact is, based on this list, I guess I'm repeating what you said, inevitably 2 out of 3, if I'm reading their resumes correctly, did not serve on the last. Am I correct, Mary, that he's the only one?
He's the only
He's the only one.
So we will get that element of new, and yet we will also get somebody that has experience and that has proven himself in the last searches. And he has also knowledge of the charter. I know that I certainly had no knowledge when I went on FinCom either, so I don't hold it against any of them. But it's good that some of them don't have knowledge and they bring a fresh perspective, but I think it's good that he does.
Yeah.
So,
Well, he was on the elected commission when we first got the charter back in the 70s, so he
day.
knows the background, and he's been on reviews of it where things have changed. Any more discussion?
I thought that he was phenomenal in his interview, but I do agree with Priscilla in the fact that I am looking for 3 residents that are just new to this and have never gone down this road, and just opening up to fresh faces that volunteered. So.
See, I have a problem with all new, because they're not going to know where to begin. As a matter of fact, if you look at it, they didn't even know the responsibilities of the town administrator. And we get that town charter every single year in the town report. I have no problem with new people. Don't get me wrong, I mean, we still have 2 other slots.
Yeah.
And none of those other people, as Mary said, have been on, search committee.
Well,
Mike?
Yes, I too would like to see new people on committees, including this committee. Bill Haggerty was so good tonight, and his answers were so good, I do have to vote for him. He was well-spoken. I think he would be the face of Sturbridge that I'd like shown to all of our prospective candidates. And, whether he's new or not new at this point doesn't matter to me as much as that I believe he would represent us very well on the committee.
Okay, so we have a motion, we had a second, we've had discussion. All in favor then of Bill Haggerty? All opposed? 3-2. Okay. Mary?
I'd like to make a nomination. And I also just want to say, I was very impressed with everybody's answers and their resumes.
Yep.
So a vote in favor of somebody really, and I can only speak for myself, but it isn't a vote against somebody else.
Absolutely.
Because if we had to have all of them, I thought they could all bring different things to the table.
Yep.
And so I like that as well. I'm going to nominate Jim Waddick. Like I said, everybody's answers were good. In fact, some of his answers kind of actually differed. I came from a different perspective, but I still appreciated where he came from, like in terms of longevity and stuff. I could appreciate what he was saying. I like the fact that he's a member of the Finance Committee. Certainly not necessary that we have somebody from the FinCom, but I do think it's helpful because a big role of a town administrator is the whole budget process that takes up months of their time. And I think members of the Finance Committee have an appreciation for the financial duties of a town administrator. So I think his take on it would be helpful, and I think it would make a well-rounded committee. I also note that in his resume, he was in Human Resources. I know none of us really asked questions. In retrospect, I wish I would have asked a few more questions based on the resume, because the townspeople don't have the resume that we did. We asked kind of more esoteric questions, but he had been with Human Resources for, I think, like more than 15 years in his role at United Net, 1985 to 2015. So 30 years in HR. So again, I think that he would be helpful to the committee.
I second that.
Okay. Let me just get, any discussion? No, I totally agree. I've watched Finance Committee, I've watched Jim work as part of the committee. He works well. His resume was impressive. Okay, any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of James Waddick? 5-0.
Can I make a nomination?
Sure.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Jay Patel for several reasons. One is his business signature within the community, his management background, and his pulse of the need of, his pulse of the people within the community. I think he would add a nice balance. Jim comes with business experience, Jay would come with business experience, and Bill Haggerty would have the experience of having done the search committee before. So I think it would be a nice rounded balance.
Okay, is anyone going to second that?
Second.
Okay, I don't feel I could vote for Jay Patel. He did speak very well, but I found a lot of his responses very negative toward the town and toward the town administrator that is leaving, and talking about we have to tell the people the issues we have. Well, anyone that's going to apply for the job, if they do a good job, they know the issues. They research the town. Even when we went for interim last time, those people looked up the issues in town. And Jay's issues, you know, with the taxes and the traffic and the Rotary, and the town's not doing enough for that, and the town, it's not up to the town. We do what we can. That Rotary idea was just a concept. We can't force the state to do that. But I found him really negative on things. I know Jay's done a lot for the town, and he did mention that land swap years ago, which worked out very well for Burgess. But he also thinks, you know, we have a lot to do with education. Town administrator has nothing to do with education. The only time the town administrator could suggest a budget, but we all know the school department, that was tried once and they didn't listen. But I really, in good faith, could not vote for Jay. Any other discussion? Mary?
Go ahead, you go
Okay, no.
next. No, because I already spoke with Waddick, so I'll speak after you.
Yeah, at this point, I'm kind of torn between, you know, I understand Jay would represent the business interests of the town, but the one that I would have nominated would be Eric Gaspar, because he would represent young families in the town. So I'm torn between the two interests as to who we should appoint to the committee. I think it would be very interesting or very important to have somebody representing, you know, the younger people in the town and particularly younger families. I like the fact that Jay represents, you know, the business interests of the town, but I'm torn because I think the younger families in the town, younger people should also be represented. So at this point, I don't know how I'm going to vote.
See how the rest of the discussion goes. Mary?
Okay, well, I'm glad that you went first, because I also, those are the two that I'm grappling with as well. I can appreciate what Mary said. I think that I love Jay's energy, and I think he is an amazing business person. I love the new hotel. I do think he had some rough parts with issues with Sturbridge, not necessarily us. And I didn't know if maybe he misunderstood Mike's question a little bit about the face of Sturbridge, where you're trying to promote Sturbridge, and he was trying to share what issues need to be presented to the town administrator to run with. So it was a little bit of I don't know if it was totally understood. But I do think he's had some issues. I love his energy. That's what I love so much about him. I think he'd bring that business perspective. I'm leaning towards Eric in the sense that he is somebody that still has children in the school system. It'd be nice to have somebody there that can talk about the great school system that we have, not to try to, and I know that the town administrator has no jurisdiction over the schools, but it's more in terms of the face of Sturbridge can answer some questions, perhaps that those we can't when we don't have children. And I do think he feels passionately about Sturbridge in a very, very positive way. I know Priscilla's not very taken with references, you want people to go out there. But I did look at the references for Eric because they came with his, and they seem to kind of echo, he is passionate about our community. I like that. I think, and the only other thing with Jay is, not everybody, I love to hear his views and the views of a business mind. I hope he's active in BAG and active with Kevin, our tourist and economic coordinator. But not everybody feels the same way about the pros of that Rotary. It sounds like he would like to see it happen. But even when it came before us, there was a lot of debate as to whether that was actually going to help traffic. So I don't want to present something to an applicant that the town all agrees with this when the town doesn't necessarily all agree with that. And as far as whether or not that Rotary goes in, that's really the state's call. It's not a town's, it's not up to the town. So I love the fact that he feels strongly about things. I just don't know if he represents a consensus about that kind of thing. So anyways, I would be happy with either one, but I am like Mike, kind of grappling with it, and happy to hear others' perspectives.
I was looking at the new issue, people that haven't been on, but I was also looking at new to town, and his youth. He did even come to a selectmen's meeting, and he watches, and is getting involved. And you do learn by getting involved. So, he would have been, or he, depending on how a vote goes, my choice.
Yeah, I feel very similar. I'm in a tough spot because my top three were Jim Waddick, Jay Patel, and Eric Gasper. And Eric and Jay both bring so much to the table, and it's such a tough choice to only choose one, because Eric's a young family man in town with kids in the school district. And when we talked about Sturbridge, his face lit up, and that he loved the town. And I truly love Sturbridge, and that was just really nice to hear from him. But Jay Patel, when I listened to his interview and the aggressiveness and the energy that he brings and the knowledge that he brings, I thought he was the top interview tonight. I agreed with what he said. I enjoyed what he said, and I can't let that go. And I second Jay Patel.
Well, he was certainly enthusiastic, but his negativeness came through if you listened carefully. And you probably know in the past he's had issues with answers he's gotten from certain people in town, and not necessarily that they were wrong answers, they were just answers he didn't like. But I really I would go with Eric. I'm just not comfortable with Jay. I like Jay. He is enthusiastic. He is a good businessman, but Priscilla?
I agree with Eric, too, because my choice would have been Eric over Bill Haggerty. I mean, that's where I was going with the youth. I don't think I would paint the picture of Jay as a narrow-minded individual that if he had a bad experience, would use that as a catalyst for a new TA. I don't see that at all, because he wouldn't have been a successful businessman if he held grudges. I see him as energetic, and the fact of the Rotary, I think he was expressing an opinion. And I do believe, as I understood the interview, that you present the positive face of Sturbridge without a doubt, but then as you get into the nitty-gritty, you look at and you talk about what you see as, what the committee sees as things that to work on. Because you want to know if this person you're interviewing can work on the things that you hope to. Obviously, as he said, you don't bring this out in the forefront. I just think that his work for the town of Sturbridge speaks volumes. And I think that he would bring that same energy to the table and work very well with the group, because he works with the business group. He's part of that business advocacy group that's in town. He opens himself to so many things, to so many ways. I just think he would do well, and would serve well, and would be a good balance on that board.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, and we have had discussions. All those in favor of the motion? 2. All those opposed to the motion? 3. The motion doesn't pass. Do we have another motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Eric Gasper to the town administrator, to search committee.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? No, I think we do all agree that, he's new, and he is young, and he had wanted to get involved before, I know, so I think he will bring a lot of energy. And bow ties.
We like that.
Bow ties.
Now that we're losing Leon and his eclectic. Okay, any more discussion on Eric? Okay, all those in favor of Eric? Okay, 5-0.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd like to thank all the
that wasn't too
candidates.
difficult?
It was difficult, I thought.
Well, I'm being facetious.
Oh, no, yeah,
It was.
I would have taken, all of them,
I would have too. If that charter allowed, I would have taken every person that interviewed tonight. They were phenomenal, and
Agreed.
Sturbridge should be proud.
It was hard for me.
Yep.
And it was hard for me, too.
Well, it's always hard to vote. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had a good rapport with Jay too, and I find it difficult, but I just have
Yeah.
that perspective. Okay, now, next on the agenda, do people have an agenda?
Yes.
Okay, is a vote to approve department manager member to the town administrator's search committee.
Could I make a nomination?
Yeah, sure, just let me change your paper here, please. Okay, Chase?
I would like to nominate Police Chief Tommy Ford for the position of Department Head in the Search Committee. I feel this way because he's been active in the town and a town employee since 1985. He's run a flawless department. Our police are phenomenal. Yeah, well,
No, I don't
Yeah.
mean to laugh, but
But, yeah.
as somebody said earlier, none of us are perfect.
no, not perfect, but I think he's done a great job with a department. We're very well respected in the community.
Yes.
And I nominate Police Chief Tommy Ford.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I'm going to say something. I fully concur, but I also think that the other two candidates were very qualified as well. And I know that you weren't nominating one, but I just wanted
Yeah.
to say it, for the record, I guess.
Absolutely. Can I say one last thing?
Absolutely.
I would like to say thank you to Kevin Filchek because he put a letter saying that he was going to donate his time in any way that he can help out. I just thought that was very commendable also for him to say
Yeah,
that.
I was going to mention that
Yeah.
later on,
Yeah.
but, because we have to make a decision on that.
Oh, yeah, okay, but,
So that's kind of
yeah.
a topic.
Yeah, okay, any more discussion? All those in favor of Tom? Okay, 5-0. Okay, let me get my checks down here. Okay, now we need a selectman representative to the Town Administrative Search Committee.
I'd like to nominate Murray Dowling to the the Selectmen's representative to the Town
Okay, Mike.
Administrator Search Committee.
Okay, I'll second that. Can't even think of my own initials. Any discussion? Chase?
This is obviously a little awkward because we're all
That's okay.
sitting here, you know. I couldn't be happier if you got on. I want to say that first. But I also feel that Miss Priscilla Jimis, when put an application in our box, and I feel like she was the only one that did that. So I do feel she deserves, I don't know, how do you say that? But I feel like she went through the proper avenue
Well,
to do that.
yeah, but that's never been done before.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
always, no, it's.
This is my first rodeo with
No,
this
I
one.
know. And the old
Yeah.
timer here. It's always just been a discussion on the board because,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
the board always works together and we know,
Yeah.
and, you know, to put down, Priscilla would do a good job too. Anybody here would do a good job. I did it the last time. I think I did a good job. We got Leon.
Yeah.
But I was only one of the committee, so Mary has a lot of experience in arbitration and that, so I think she'll do a good job on that.
In my own,
Priscilla?
in my own
Defense?
defense, yeah. I applied because I took it as something that should be done when I saw the notice that went out about people who wanted it to apply, and I sent it in. In the interest of transparency, I sent it in so that everybody would know who I am. I don't disagree that Mary has the background for a moment. I don't disagree. However, I have hired and fired people and had to evaluate and had to do site visits and the like, so I don't feel that my background was shoddy. I wish that I had an opportunity to be interviewed by this board as the other folks have been interviewed. I really would. I was hoping for that there would be an interview process for us, so that people who don't know who I am, other than that I sit here, would get to know that. But that's obviously not going to take place.
Mary?
Thank you for your support, and absolutely at the other end of the table, I don't have any, ill will at all. I think that if we want to in the future be part of the formal process, then
We'd have to change the process.
we'd have to, meet and, just like Leon encouraged us to have policies, that might be the way to go. But for your benefit, the past practice, I was a little bit actually surprised. It was fine to get your resume, it's very impressive. But our past practice has always been anytime we need to appoint someone to any kind of committee, we haven't put in an application like that. As Mary said, she was the last one that we appointed for Leon, and I was sitting on the board when we found Sean Sahosky as well.
Yeah,
You
I was
did
on
that-
the board.
You did that one too, I think. Were you on the search committee for Sean?
No.
Who did that one?
Guerrieri.
Scott Guerrieri and Carol Childress and Linda Cacalis and them.
I don't remember the overlap. Oh, I overlap with Scott very briefly. Okay, but that's been our practice. But if we do want to change it, I think it should be an agenda item, and we can.
Yeah. But I mean, if we change it just for this, which hopefully doesn't happen too often, we'd have to change it for all,
Right.
Central Mass and that. But, no, any one of us would do a good job, but, okay, so we've had a nomination, second discussion, all in favor? All opposed? 3-2. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay, now we need a vote to refer the recreational marijuana bylaw to the planning board for a hearing.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, and you all have a copy of it, and they will be setting a public hearing date. Okay, all in favor? Okay, 5-0. I could never be a secretary. Okay, next, we have a vote to execute the contract with the interim town administrator, and you all have a copy of it. Does anyone have any questions?
That was fast, Mary. Very impressed.
I mean, we just got it tonight. It was on the seats, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to have to assume that it's the same as what we've done before, because I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yeah, no, it is basically, that's why I was just going to respond to Mary, that we didn't reinvent the wheel.
That's
And
good.
Ted was very amenable, and it's basically the same rate, a few pennies less than the last
He's hourly,
interim.
though. Was our other...
Well, he's hourly, and that was discussed because, you know, he thought it would be easier for us and easier for him if he's here maybe 4 hours one day, and then maybe 8 hours the next day, or if he does 7, 7, and 7. You know, it may fluctuate depending.
Will his hours be posted for the people to know?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay, so,
And I was fine personally with the Monday through Thursday,
yeah.
because Tuesday's the day we stay open late, and Friday is a half a day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
Yeah,
thought that
and even
worked.
on Tuesday, he doesn't necessarily have to be here that whole time. Because
Right.
basically, it works out to 7 hours for 4 days. So, like Mondays, there'll be, October has a Monday holiday, and not another one till November, so he'd switch. So, but the hours work out. So then is there a motion to sign the contract?
So moved.
Is
Second.
Second, okay. Any more discussion? All in favor? Okay, 5-0. Okay, so,
So is he coming in tomorrow?
yes.
Wow, good.
Yeah, he was in for a short while today. He'll be in tomorrow. So, do you have a clean one? Contract.
Oh, yeah, I have them on, I have 3 of them.
Oh,
3
okay,
copies.
okay, so, we don't have any other business, so we can adjourn and then sign. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I just have,
Oh,
before we do
Mary?
that, is it up to the search committee to decide about Kevin, or can we make our
Oh, I'm
comments?
sorry, I forgot. It's not really up to the search committee. We pick the search committee, so that's going to be part of it. I am not in favor of that. I certainly appreciate him offering, but the trouble is you start bringing in more people, and the chances of leaks. Plus, most of the meetings, they will be going into executive session. So that won't be public knowledge, so you wouldn't, post the minutes and stuff. So, I would like to thank Kevin, but I don't think it's really necessary, You
I
start.
agree with that. I agree with that, yeah.
I,
Go ahead.
yeah, well, the only thing I would say is if they needed staff to do some research or do stuff outside of the meetings, say if they requested, some information, if he's available to help research,
Well, that's not a bad idea, but let me.
I thought that's what he was offering to
No, but let me
do.
tell you, with Bill Haggerty, any research that was done, Bill did it, or the other members of the committee.
Committee.
Because you have to keep it tight.
Confidential.
You
Yeah.
really do, because, somebody can
that's
walk
why
up
I
to
really-
Kevin and say, hey, Kevin, this, I saw this, oh, yeah, that person came in. Things get out when they're not intentioned. And Bill knows how to,
Yeah.
he might not be chairman, but he certainly knows how to help them at the beginning, what to do. I mean, some of the questions to ask, how to go about advertising for the position and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the fewer people that know what's going on, and Janae, let me tell you, any packet that comes in once the advertisement goes out, it's strictly confidential. It just goes to the search committee. We're not allowed to see it. Okay?
I just want to comment too, it's obvious that everybody is in agreement, other than me, so I know it's not going to fly, but just to offer a different perspective, I was actually welcoming Kevin's input. I appreciate the confidentiality, but I guess I would have erred on the side of trusting him. We also go into executive session, and our administrative assistant always comes into executive session and confidentiality. She's not a member of the board. And we also discuss confidential in executive session matters. I guess I've worked with Kevin quite a bit now on the special events committee, and I'm not saying everybody else disagreed, but I would have trusted his ability to maintain confidential in his note-taking and whatever, so.
Oh, I'm sure, but things get out, and when we go into executive session, most times it's issues that people don't even care about. But getting a new town administrator, everybody wants to, pardon the expression, stick their nose in it and find out what's going on. So it's fewer people.
But, Mary brought up a good point. Who will be taking notes during their
themselves.
meetings?
They'll find somebody.
One of the,
Yeah, one of them.
one of the committee people.
They do their own minutes.
Yeah, I did them the last time.
That's the way to keep it confidential.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I agree with Mary that I would trust Kevin, but,
Oh, it's not a matter of lack of trust. It's just a matter of you really have to keep it.
yeah. Well,
Tight.
I was the one that made sure everybody knew that the search committee's
I have a
confidential.
question. I'm not saying asking to be difficult, but I generally have this question. I know that we said it is up to the search committee ultimately to determine whether or not they want to utilize a search firm or a headhunter, to use a kind of colloquial expression, and it's not up to us. Would the search committee be beyond its authority and jurisdiction if they took a vote and elected to or not use Kevin? I don't know if, is it all that different than them deciding whether they wanted to use a search committee or not?
Oh, I don't think that's their job.
It's not
That's
their
not
job.
their job.
It's, our job is to set up the search committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, I
And
understand
if-
that, but
But
it's
if-
their, just like it's their job to decide whether or not, I just want to make sure I go into this understanding what the board's position is. It is their decision whether or not they decide to use a search committee, right?
Yeah.
But whether or not they decide to choose somebody to take notes of meetings, like Janae does, and say it's Kevin, is not their decision. Is that what the
No,
board's
no,
saying?
It's not
That's
their
right.
decision. Yeah.
It's not, they'll do it among themselves.
Because that would be a part of that committee.
Right.
And
Okay.
we set the
Correct.
committee up.
Okay.
And I do want to say, the longevity of a town administrator, it would be great. I mean, we lost Leon because there are not that many people out there in their 30s and 40s going into town manager, town administrators positions. There's a whole crew of retirees now. Some of them have 20 years, some of them have 30 years, and their places are finding it difficult to hire good people. That's why they're using a lot of these quote-unquote headhunters. That's how we lost Leon. He didn't go looking.
Right.
They came for him. That's how Westboro lost Jim Malloy to Lexington. Same thing. They go looking. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to end the meeting.
Well,
A second. Good one.
any discussion? All in favor? Okay, Jeanette, you want to pass those down, please, and we